I mean, what's Pro Football Focus doing? Last week they had Brady. This week they got Brady.
We're literally doing it differently from everybody else.
As a matter of fact, moving forward from this point on, I will not make reference to PFF.
Ready to get into it?
Yeah.
All right. We're going team by team.
I would be very careful about slinging stuff.
Am I going to get sued?
You got legal on this?
That sends you out on the right note. PFF sucks. Have a great day, everybody.
Wow.
Welcome into the PFF NFL podcast. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson. We're live on YouTube. And today, Sam, reviewing all of the 2023 first-round picks.
Yep, let's go.
Let's go. Before we get into it, though, just need to preface, it looks like I've been in a fight.
A little
we
bit.
have a little cut on my forehead. You could do the solo shot for now, Eli, I guess, while I'm explaining things. But I was gushing blood here last night. It was.
What'd you do to yourself?
You want the truth?
No, I've heard the truth. The truth is terrible. Give me a better answer. Give me a better story.
What did we just discuss off air?
We were fighting off a coyote.
That's what it was. That's what it was.
Of, Cincinnati.
Wild coyote on the street.
Protecting the kids.
Protecting the kids. Yeah.
Yeah.
The coyote came out. I said, "Kids, get in the house."
Big coyote.
Looked
like a wolf.
Yeah. He got it.
Gotcha.
I got the better of him.
Right.
He got his shots in.
Yeah.
So I got clawed.
Okay.
It was not while I was loading the printer.
No.
It had nothing to do with the printer. It was the coyote. So if you see me with a big gash on my head, hardway juice, as we say. If you see me with a big gash on my head, it was because it was the coyote.
Yeah.
Got it?
I got it.
All right, great. So let's get right into this. This is a fun show. What I wanted to do was review all of last year's rookies in the first round, the 2023. So this is going to be like draft night 2023. We're going to go pick by pick, Sam, from the NFL draft. We're going to give you a quick synopsis. We're going to try to do this quickly, all right?
Yeah.
Quick synopsis of what the player did, what we saw, and then what the outlook is for 2024, how to either turn it around, build off, a good first year, whatever it might be. All right, you ready to do this?
Yep.
Let's get right into it. We're going to start with the Carolina Panthers. The first overall pick was Bryce Young. Of course, with all the QBs, we've talked about all of them quite a bit here already on the show, but the quick synopsis of Bryce Young's rookie season and then how we can maybe turn things around for 2024.
Okay. The quick synopsis was it was very, very bad.
Bad season.
He didn't look good. In fact, he looked very bad. And on the occasions when he did flash a little bit of skill, you saw every now and again there was a really nice layered pass over a linebacker into a window, whatever. Didn't happen very often. Every now and again they would happen. And usually when that happened, the person at the end of that pass dropped the ball. So terrible situation. He didn't show much, and when he did, he was let down by the people around him. Consequently, the coaching staff got fired at the end of the season, and they tried to overhaul literally everything around him. Offensive line, receiving core, backfield, coaching staff. So, awful rookie season. No way of not being concerned by that rookie season. But we have seen players, play badly like that to begin their NFL careers and come out of the other side of that.
I'm not trying to take anything away from C.J. Stroud, who we're going to talk about here in a second, but man, my head looks terrible. But to take, we spend a lot of time just focused on the player, but the situation does matter. You have a guy like C.J. Stroud going into the Shanahan system. On paper, the situation didn't look great. I think Stroud certainly elevated those guys in Houston. But with Bryce Young, I do wonder how year two is going to look. And the connection with Dave Canales coming in as head coach, Canales coming off of, over the last 3 years, being a part of Geno Smith, being rejuvenated, and Baker Mayfield being rejuvenated. Is he the guy to help turn Bryce Young around, as well as bringing in just a simple threat like Deonte Johnson? Because every single third down, it felt like, hey, Adam Thielen is the go-to guy. Now they at least have someone else who can get open there. Running back Jonathan Brooks in the first round, knock Mingo down the depth chart a little bit. And, of course, first-round receiver Xavier Legette. I mean, they've got much better pieces as far as, presumably, head coach, play caller, and, the weapons. So,
yeah, if you're going to pull out of the kind of season that Bryce Young had last year, you're going to need the things that they did in the offseason. Like, if they had done not much, tried to sort of stand pat, maybe upgrade a thing or two here or there, but generally stayed the course, I would be wildly concerned. Like, I would be immediately pessimistic and saying, I don't think there's much chance of this happening. But they have upgraded the line. They have upgraded the receiving core. They have connected him to a proven quarterback whisperer type of coach who's had a really good track record recently. So I'm not saying that means it's going to happen, but if it's going to happen, those are good things to do.
All right, let's get right into pick number 2, the Houston Texans.
Before we do that, I just want to quickly, we had an email in off the back of last show we did, which was an episode on clutch quarterbacks with Arif Hassan. It was a really good episode. Go listen to it. It was great fun. An email came in to nflpodcast@pff.com from Danny. Sam and Steve, just listened to the episode on clutch quarterbacks, thinking as a Chiefs fan, I get to sit back and enjoy hearing how Mahomes is great like Brady and Montana. When out of left field, Steve brings up Game 7 at Madison Bumgarner, the single worst in-person sporting event experience of my life. I can still remember staring at Bumgarner's pitch count on the Kaufman Stadium scoreboard and praying it would reach a number high enough that he would get pulled. Now, to make it worse, I hear Steve say that he was just too dumb to realize that his arm hurt, and that's why the Royals lost the World Series. Thanks a lot, Steve. Sam, you're still cool. Thanks, from Danny.
Also, to clarify, Madison, I did not say you're too dumb. I did not say that.
We got it locked in a quote graphic. That's exactly
I said,
what you said
he was compartmentalizing very well, very, very well what he was doing as a pitcher, you know? Look, if you're blowing your nose and I've got a scar on my head, it's tough to get
a rough morning.
A solo cam on either of us right now, so we're going to get caught here. All right. That was who was that, Danny?
Danny.
Thank you, Danny.
So, good emails will get
and my apologies
right out
for reliving the 2014 World Series Game 7 Giants-Royals. The Royals won the next year anyway. So
he's just too dumb to knew his arm hurt.
Go Royals. George Brett fan over here too. Me.
Now
My
you
favorite
get into
player of all time.
Now you can get into clutch quarterbacks.
Now we're into C.J. Stroud. Pick number 2 was the Houston Texans. They also had pick number 3, in case you didn't know. But C.J. Stroud, again, we've discussed him quite a bit. I thought he was awesome last year. I think we all saw that. Now, to me, the question is, does he take the next step toward stardom, or is he just very good? Are there things that the league is going to do to adjust? What does C.J. Stroud have to do to maintain the level of success of last year?
Yeah, in a funny way, it's like, what if Brock Purdy had been a first-round draft pick instead of the Mr. Irrelevant, right? Isn't that kind of the same idea that we're dealing with here is, sure, he played really amazingly, but how much of that was him? How much of it was Bobby Slowick? How much of it was breakout Nico Collins and Tank Dell being better than people expected and all these kinds of things? Like, C.J. Stroud was incredible, dramatically, I think, exceeded many expectations. Not everybody. There were some people really high on Stroud as a draft pick and as a prospect. Really exceeded most people's expectations. But any quarterback in these Shanahan offenses, right now there's basically 3 of them tearing up the league. There's the OG with Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco, there's Miami, and there's Houston. All 3 of those are dealing with varying degrees of, we know that they make the quarterback look better than he would be in a random system, but we don't know how much. So you're dealing with that with Tua in Miami, now with Stroud in Houston, and obviously Purdy in San Francisco.
It felt like early in the season for Stroud, his reliance on his mechanics, his accuracy. Remember early in the year, they were extremely pass heavy. They lost their first 2 games, right? And he was throwing like 55, 60 times a game, playing from behind. But there were so many throws in there where you're like, all right, I see, like there's something there. And to me, it was like second read, footwork. And then he started to get more and more comfortable. And then you started to see the parts of the Georgia game that were most impressive, his ability to make plays outside of structure. And that whole combination led to an incredible run of play from Stroud. The thing I've said before, though, there was definitely a point where it felt like maybe too much he was relying on that. So I think he's got all the tools, as in make plays from the pocket, mechanics, accuracy, seeing the field well. I want him to always rely on that. And then on top of that, some natural playmaking really stood out last year. So I think that combination gives Stroud that elite potential. And the Texans took no chances and said, hey, we're bringing in Stephon Diggs. We're going to load this thing up and really go for it already in years 2 and 3 here for the Texans. So I think the rookie season was impressive and the future's bright for C.J. Stroud.
Yeah, I mean, they're making moves like they expect to win. Win not just playoff games, but go on a run and try and win a Super Bowl this year.
All right, let's go with Will Anderson, of course, with the Texans as well. They traded up to get him at pick number 3. He finishes his rookie season with an 82.6 PFF grade. That's one of the 10 best edge rush grades that we've ever seen for a rookie, and it's right next to Aiden Hutchinson, who did it the previous year with the Detroit Lions. And for me, this is what Anderson looked like as a prospect and looked like as a rookie, an Aiden Hutchinson-like player who might not be as flashy as some as the Myles Garretts of the world, the better edge rush prospects, but they looked like they were going to hit the ground running in the NFL, and they did.
Yeah, I think that's where he belonged, right, as a prospect, which is a really, really good prospect. But there was questions with both those guys. Are they in the Nick Bosa category? Like, are they in the Myles Garrett category? Are they, absolutely incredible, can't miss type prospects who have everything and project to like overwhelming dominance at the next level? Or are they just a tick below that who can still become phenomenal players, but are that notable step down? And I think they probably are. They're in that, not even a full step, like a half step down from those truly elite prospects. But that still makes them almost can't miss and better than almost any other prospect you're going to find out there. And that's kind of what he looked like right away as a rookie. A really good, impactful player, good in both pass rush and run defense. Like he looked like he was in Alabama. And then the only question remaining for him, like Aiden Hutchinson, is, okay, how high can you push this now? You're already good, right? Minimum, you're a solid, good, better than solid. You're a good NFL pass rusher right this second. Now the question is, how close can you get to Nick Bosa, to Myles Garrett, to these defensive player of the year kind of players?
One of the things I'll say a few times with the other edge rushers in this class is it usually takes edge rushers a year, right? If you look at just all rookie edges, they start out slow generally, but then by year 2 they take a big jump, and that's pretty much going to be the story for the rest of the edge rushers in this first round. They're all guys that started out slow, maybe showed some flashes of stuff. Will Anderson's the only guy who was consistent from start to finish. As you mentioned, hammer in the run game, very good pass rusher, and he started out, just way better than pretty much every other player at his position as far as first rounders go. So feeling good about Will Anderson, not only what he did as a rookie, but I think he has that star potential. We were talking about Aiden Hutchinson as a year 2. Let's put him in the top 8-ish conversation for edge rushers. I think Anderson has that potential in year 2 as well.
Yeah, Aiden Hutchinson would already be in the Defensive Player of the Year kind of conversation if there wasn't half a dozen of those Defensive Player of the Year candidate edge rushers in the NFL right now.
Or if he had a little bit more help last year. I would say.
Maybe.
All right, well, as a busy parent, you want to give your kids a head start in their financial future, but investing can often be both confusing and time-consuming. But Fabric by Gerber Life makes it easy for you to set up an investment account for your child that grows with them and helps prepare for their financial future. Fabric by Gerber Life was designed by parents for parents to make it easy to plan for and manage your family's financial path. With a UGMA account from Fabric, you can start investing in your child's future today. UGMA stands for Uniform Gifts to Minors Act. So while your kids can invest while they're minors, a UGMA account allows you to invest on their behalf and gives their investments more time to grow. So join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their family. Start investing in your child today at meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. That's meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. MEET fabric.com/PFFNFL. Portfolio is managed by Fort Washington Investment Advisors, Inc. Additional services provided by Apex Cleaning Corporation. All investing is subject to risk. Monthly minimum contribution required. Learn more at meetfabric.com. Should have just used my read from the Arif show on Thursday.
We nailed it.
Best read I've ever had with the pressure of a guest on the line there. I was just, again, showing what clutch really means.
All of your best reads come under pressure.
They certainly do. All right, let's go. Pick number 4 overall, Anthony Richardson of the Indianapolis Colts. Another one we've discussed, but only started and completed 2 games, started 4 total games, ended the season ended early with a shoulder injury. What are your thoughts on Anthony Richardson and what we're going to be looking for this season?
Yeah, so it was almost like a microcosm of his college career where the main problem was we just didn't see enough of it, right?
Yeah.
And that was kind of the deal where, okay, again, he's way further along from a pocket passing, mental processing, reading of a defense point of view than I think people expected him to be. And I think a lot of that is just not fully watching his tape. I mean, this was the case in college. He was incredibly inexperienced and young as a quarterback, but he was not just a one read and run type of player. He did operate from a pocket to a pretty high degree in college. It's just that because he's the greatest athlete to ever enter the league as a quarterback, we tend to attach that to a certain style of play and assume that he can't possibly be, a mental processing, cerebral type of quarterback as well. So the same thing was true. He was further along mentally than I think people expected him to be. He was also capable of spectacular plays, both with his arm and his legs. The inaccuracy that was the biggest sort of red flag of his prospect film was still there. And then the new variable or the new piece of information was, and we had multiple injuries that then set him out for the year. And that is the big concern, because if you're going to use Anthony Richardson to the fullest of his capabilities, he is part of your designed run game. And he just hurt himself twice doing that in 4 weeks.
Yeah, so he had 4 touchdowns in the, 4 games that he played, right? Not even 4 complete games. You could see Shane Steichen, Colts head coach. You could see the creativity and how they were using him. Some of the touchdowns were just easy, right? Schemed up. But that rushing ability does open up so much of the offense. So that's what for 2024, what's that balance, right? Part of the secret sauce of Anthony Richardson is his ability to run, to open up the pass, create open throws, mitigate some of the accuracy issues. I think, again, there's not much to – I would say there's definitely more positive to feel about Richardson in that small sample size. He had a couple turnover-worthy plays that may have hurt his production grades. He had a couple fumbles, a couple bad turnover-worthy plays in there. But other than that, you feel good about what you can build upon right here. It's just a matter, for me, finding that balance of completely relying on him winning within the pocket versus continuing to build that run game around him, because I think the potential of the run game and what that does for the pass game is through the roof, and they have to figure out how to best keep him healthy.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what this season looks like for him, because the injuries last season, the classic reason that teams did not like quote-unquote running quarterbacks back in the day is you can't use them in the NFL because you're going to get hurt, right? You expose them to too many hits, and that's too risky in the NFL. And they get hurt and you can't use those guys, and it's not worth it, right? And I think in recent years that has changed and teams are tapping more into that style. But in 4 weeks, Richardson basically reinforced every old stereotype of why you can't use a quarterback in that way. Does that change things, or do they just put that down to, look, sometimes you're going to get, injuries happen, you get unlucky, and we carry on. We stick with the game plan. We're still going to use him in that way, and then we're going to bring him on? Or is it no, we have to really scale back how much we're going to tap into that kind of stuff and expect him to do more without that propping him up? That it just changes. It changes the acceleration arc and the growth curve that you expect from him. So I'm curious to see how much they let those multiple injuries affect their plan for him.
All right, let's go to pick number 5. It is the Seattle Seahawks' Devon Witherspoon. Outstanding rookie season for Witherspoon. We were joking a lot that he was everybody's favorite player around draft time, but especially Pete Carroll's. Even with Pete Carroll no longer in Seattle, though, I think Mike McDonald has a weapon to use. Sam, I think I was most surprised by how much Devon Witherspoon played in the slot. He played outside as well, but when they put him in the slot, he was playing the run, and he was the quintessential slot corner, right? The nickel guy that gets dirty in the run game, makes plays as a pass rusher, was all over the field, and every game you felt the impact of Devon Witherspoon, and I can't wait to see what Mike McDonald does with him, because there's already been comparisons to what Witherspoon can do and how McDonald used Kyle Hamilton. Even though Hamilton's a safety in name, he was the guy that played nickel and did it all in and around the line of scrimmage and made a ton of plays. Yeah,
very different body types, very different players, but from a utilization standpoint, Devon Witherspoon might be the closest thing Seattle have to what Kyle Hamilton was doing within that defense in Baltimore last season. Witherspoon was fantastic. He could play inside, he could play outside, he could do everything from either of those alignments. Again, more of what we saw in college. And I think that's that's going to be the case for a lot of these guys. Like, this is the funny thing about draft scouting is you spend your entire time projecting what these guys can become, and I think in a lot of cases they're the same players as they were in college. It didn't radically change.
I did go through and wrote notes on a bunch of these first rounders off of their rookie film, and I tried to not look at my college notes.
Right.
And there were a lot of similarities.
Yeah.
Especially, again, when we get to some of the edge rushers who weren't used as often.
Witherspoon's defining trait in his college tape was, I've never seen a corner so far ahead of the game in terms of reading the play. Like, he was always ahead of everybody else on the field. So there's so many of those plays where he's arriving with bad intentions in this sort of highlight reel hit, but that only happens because he set off 2 yards before anybody else on the defense or even anybody else on the offense. Like, the anticipation is what made the highlight reel hit. And the highlight reel hit is what you remember, but the really impressive part of that play was the reading and the anticipation of what he was doing. And he had at least one of those highlights in his rookie season that sort of showed you the processing and the intelligence. It was against San Francisco, where he's playing the backside of the classic Shanahan play where it's a deep over to Brandon Ayuk, and he's on the backside of this play. He's getting sent the other way by his receiver, and he suddenly reads it, peels off his guy, turns and starts running towards his own goalposts, and understands that the ball is about to arrive, and like blindly spins his hand up like over his head, running away from the ball, and ends up tapping it away from Brandon Ayuk, saves a touchdown on that play. Like, I don't know if there's another corner in the game that's making that play, and he's making it as a rookie because of that ability to read, diagnose, and play.
Just hearing that description reminds me a lot of Marcus Peters and some of the plays he made in his heyday as just a ball hawk corner. But I think Witherspoon's a better overall player than Peters, better tackler, better different role. Again, playing more in the slot right now than outside. But Peters used to have interceptions like that when he was in places where he shouldn't have been. He just had a great feel for the game. So big fans of Devon Witherspoon here on the PFF NFL podcast.
Yeah.
Broke up 18% of his targets, one of the highest rates in the league. So great rookie season for Witherspoon. And again, I can't wait to see what he does with McDonald in Seattle. All right, number 6 overall pick was the Arizona Cardinals, Paris Johnson. Remember, they were going to take the Ohio State offensive lineman at number 3 overall. They traded down, then traded back up. They get Paris Johnson at number 6. He played right tackle for them in year 1. Looks like he's going to probably move to left tackle. Johnson played, so he finishes with a 60.1 PFF grade. It was much better in the second half.
Yep.
And there was a bunch of these rookie tackles who got moved to the right side and looked a little out of place. Remember, this happened with Penei Sewell a few years ago. And I think Johnson was the guy that had the most distinct splits. If you just go to the second half, he was by far the best rookie tackle over the second half of the season. My question, though, is he's now played right guard in 2021, left tackle in 2022, right tackle in 2023, back to left tackle in 24. This will be his 4th position in 4 years, and that does affect your production.
Yeah, so other than that part, it's almost the classic offensive tackle sort of development story in the NFL. Like, you get these college left tackles that often have to start at right tackle in the NFL, and they move back to the left side once that opens up the following year. They generally struggle right away. They improve. They're generally better as a pass blocker than they are as a run blocker, and then the overall output of their rookie season is okay, you know? And then year 2, you get the big jump, and maybe year 3 is when they become superstars. So all of the sort of classic elements of offensive line development are there with Paris Johnson. Like, his overall grade was 60. His pass blocking grade was 65. As you said, that includes a much rougher first half of the season, including by far his worst game coming against Myles Garrett and the Cleveland Browns, his second worst game coming against Micah Parsons and the Dallas Cowboys. So, you know, these things make sense, right? And then a dramatically better second half of the year. And yeah, like, I would say an as expected from a rookie offensive tackle season from him.
Yeah, just to put some numbers to it, 71.8 PFF grade after week 10 for Paris Johnson. You compare that to the other rookie tackles, and he was far and away the top guy. So I feel pretty good about Paris Johnson going into next year. Again, even though 4th position in 4 years, back to left tackle, but I think he showed enough. He looked a little out of place going to right tackle for the first time like some of the other guys did, but I think he'll be pretty good going forward. All right, pick number 7, Tyree Wilson of the Las Vegas Raiders. Wilson didn't play a ton relative to the other guys, but the production just was not there. Pass rush grade of 50.4, run defense grade was not great as well. There was a point in the season where Malcolm Kuntz really stepped up on the edge opposite Max Crosby that allowed the Raiders to maybe move Tyree Wilson inside a little bit. I think he showed a little bit more life rushing from the interior, but I think again, I watched a lot of the edge rushers closely here. A lot of them are just lacking something that is their ability to keep opposing offensive tackles off balance. For Wilson, he just, for a length type of player, just didn't have enough power as a pass rusher and enough juice as a pass rusher to really threaten tackles, and that really affected, of course, his pass rush win rate and his actual production.
Yeah, so he was coming off that foot injury.
And he was coming off injury as well.
Which I think is basically the only crumb of comfort for Raiders fans or for Tyree Wilson fans is if we say he was coming off this injury and maybe that wasn't him. Because the biggest indictment of his season is that he played almost 500 snaps. Like, this is not somebody, if you were looking at some of these other rookie edge rushers, you could say, well, he didn't play enough to make an impact, right? Will McDonald or Felix FAU, right? You could say, well, he didn't get enough snaps.
Right. Tyree did play more than it felt.
Right. But Tyree played 500 snaps and had almost zero impact whatsoever. That's the most concerning element of there. Now, okay, if we say this was coming off a foot injury, this wasn't the real Tyree Wilson, the problem is that in this world of pattern matching and, trying to create a narrative here, neither one of us liked Tyree Wilson as a draft prospect, in part because of the lack of production, right? And this sort of fits with that narrative of, there's not a great history of him being a productive player, and his tape showed a relatively one-dimensional, far from complete impact edge rusher. So, look, if we give him the benefit of the doubt and say he is an impressive athlete who was coming off an injury, but next year has to be dramatically better because he showed basically nothing as a rookie.
So again, I think it will be interesting to see if they rush him against guards a little bit more. He did have more success in that area. Pass rush win rate of about 6%. So the production was not good. A lot of nothing rushes in there. Got beat up in the run game a little bit. But he was 23 on top of all that. He's not exactly young and developmental. However, it's a unique body type. I think Charles Omenihu was my comp for him.
Right.
Like, if he develops into a player that can be a move up and down the line of scrimmage, create mismatches with his length type of player, I think that's the future for Tyree Wilson. All right, pick number 8, Bijan Robinson, Atlanta Falcons. What a fun rookie season for Bijan. Perhaps the most memorable part of it was people calling for more touches for Bijan in Arthur Smith's system. 58 catches and 4 receiving touchdowns, 4 rushing touchdowns, and just a slew of highlight reel plays from Bijan.
Yeah, but I guess in also a sort of slightly underwhelming season in terms of overall production and maybe, the discussion around Bijan Robinson at draft time was, is he special enough as a running back to make you throw the rules out of the window, right, in terms of how high you can draft this guy, all the things we know about running backs and their dependency on their environment? Is he so special that none of it matters anymore? It doesn't count. You can draft him as high as you want because he's that good. We saw flashes, certainly, of those plays, like some amazing highlight reel plays in his rookie season. But he still split the load with Tyler Algier, who's a good running back in his own right. Split the load, didn't have 1,000 yards, was held back, I guess, and did not make the kind of overwhelming impact where you'd say, okay, he's definitely worth a top 10 draft pick, or, you can draft him as high as you like and it doesn't matter. You're like, all right, he's a good player, but now we're hoping year 2 unlocks the full breadth of what Bijan can be and, gives him a sort of Christian McCaffrey type of opportunity to do everything that he can do.
Had 5 fumbles in there as well, which I think hurt from a grading and production standpoint. But yeah, I want to see with Zach Robinson running the show in Atlanta, where he goes workload wise. Is he going to completely rely on Bijan? Is the touch count going to go up, and Algier is going to be more of a pure backup there? And then with Bijan too at Texas, we saw him lined up out wide, and you could do all sorts of creative stuff. He had that one touchdown last year on a screen pass where he had that just like stops on a dime and gets in. I mean, just some of the plays he had were outstanding.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see what they do with him in the pass game. Is it just simple stuff like, hey, we're going to catch some screens, we're going to catch some check downs and underneath, or are they going to move Bijan around and create mismatches? Because he can run double moves, he can do all sorts of stuff all over the formation. So I'm excited to see Bijan in year 2. I think it was mostly good in year 1. Again, you take out the fumbles, he showed he could create. Forced missed tackles pretty high on a per carry basis. They were pretty good. So I think he was as advertised in year 1. And then again, the only thing we were left with was maybe expecting more and more opportunities.
Yeah, he certainly looks like a special talent and a special running back. But I think all it does is sort of it gives you some more the evidence that you would then reverse engineer into that argument of, is he the unicorn? Would sort of say, again, this is why the default position is don't chase those unicorns, because even as special as Bijan Robinson is, you look at that and say, yeah, probably not.
I mean, the argument against it is even if you find the unicorn, the difference that they make for your team isn't as drastic as, even just a very good player at another position potentially.
But that just makes them like that's why they're not the unicorn. They're just a fancier horse.
All right, pick number 9, Philadelphia Eagles. Remember, they traded up 1 pick to get Jalen Carter, defensive tackle from Georgia, and boy, did they look like geniuses early on. Jalen Carter did slow down a little bit in the second half of the season, but when you take his year in totality and you just look at grades, pass rush production, however you want to parse it, 89.5 overall grade, 84.6 pass rush grade, one of the most effective interior pass rushers in the NFL last year. It's one of the better rookie seasons for a defensive lineman in recent history.
Yeah, and even the slowing down thing, I think perhaps wasn't as precipitous a drop-off as maybe it was being talked about as. I think
it's almost from the perspective of he had 2 games in the 90s in his first 3 weeks, and you expected ascent more than anything. Yeah,
it's like for the first sort of 4 or 5 weeks of the season, he was grading as the best interior defender in the NFL. Like he was there with Aaron Donald, right? And it's like, did we just find the next Aaron Donald right out of the box for Philadelphia? Relative to that, he slowed down. But even if you look like from week 9 onwards, he still had an overall grade of 73, which was the 3rd best mark among rookies. Number 1, Kobe Turner, he had the second half of the season that looked like the first half of Jalen Carter. And then number 2 was Carl Brooks from Green Bay, who had dramatically fewer snaps. So
Watch list, Carl Brooks this year.
Yeah. So Carter, I think overall, when you consider the first half was literally as good as any defensive tackle in the NFL, and then the second half was still pretty good. Overall, maybe we leaned a little bit too hard on he's hit a rookie wall, he slowed down. It's where did the Jalen Carter go from the first half of the season, and the totality of that as a rookie year was pretty incredible.
Finishes with 599 snaps. I think that was one of the questions too, just like Jordan Davis coming out, was what type of workload could Jalen Carter handle? He had never played more than 403 snaps at Georgia. So a couple years right around 400. So this was 200 snaps more than he'd ever played.
And maybe that on its own explains the relative slowdown. I think the other element is when you look at some of the weak games in the second half of the season, like he didn't make an impact against the Giants' offensive line, who were terrible, right? So it's not even like you can explain it by, he played a couple of good offensive lines and they shut him down. It's like, no, he just disappeared in a couple of games where he should have made an impact.
Carter was a little better as a pass rusher than he was as a run defender. But again, I go back. I'm just going to explain. Aaron Donald in year 1 graded right around a 90. It was very good. He didn't look like future Hall of Famer Aaron Donald. He looked very good.
Right.
By year 2, future Hall of Famer. J.J. Watt, similar, right? Very good year 1.
Yeah.
Looked like a Hall of Famer in year 2. I think Carter has that potential where like year 2, he might look like a superstar right away, which again, we were talking about like 3 weeks in last year, like, oh man, he's already getting there. But this is the type of talent that he has and the type of rookie production that he had. I'm not putting Aaron Donald and J.J. Watt comps on him. I'm just saying, I think Jalen Carter has superstar potential here in year 2.
It is generally not a position that makes immediate dominant impact. So for him to literally, week 1 was a 90 grade, 8 total pressures, a sack in there, and the first sort of 7 weeks of the season, he was as good as anybody. So for him to make that kind of immediate impact at that level, I think comparing anybody to 3-time Defensive Player of the Year winners, J.J. Watt and Aaron Donald, that's an unreasonable bar and an unreasonable expectation. It's like slapping Mahomes comps on anybody.
Sorry.
But no. But I'm saying, like, those are 2 of a very few short list of players at that interior position that have made that kind of immediate impact. Carter has put himself in that category as a rookie. Now, obviously, those 2 guys took a huge step forward and went from there, like already really, really good, to the best defender in the NFL for at least a period of 3 years. Can Carter take that kind of step? Total unknown. But at least he's had the kind of rookie impact that those guys had.
All right, let's go to pick number 10, Chicago Bears, Darnell Wright, offensive tackle out of Tennessee. Wright started right away, played all 17 games for the Bears, and he was solid or cogent even. Pretty good pass block grade, pretty good run block grade. Again, for a rookie. Wasn't one of the better tackles in the league, but he looked like a serviceable starter. And with offensive linemen, they usually don't figure it out until year 2 or 3. None of the offensive linemen in this class, I don't think, looked like Tristan Wirfs, right? Tristan Wirfs immediately was one of the best tackles in the league. Paris Johnson didn't do it. Darnell Wright didn't do it. Anton Harrison didn't do it. Broderick Jones. None of those guys were the best or one of the better offensive linemen in the league, but Wright looked like a capable starter in year 1.
Yeah, and I think I was impressed by his run blocking when you consider his college tape, which was really, really good as a pass blocking from a pass blocking standpoint. His run blocking was that boom or bust type of run blocking where he's going to absolutely bury people on
highlight
some
reel
plays.
Was legit.
Yeah, but then he would just whiff or miss or just not make an impact on other plays, and those are the ones where you focus on the can-do. You focus on the highlight reel blocks, but the overall grade from a run blocking standpoint in college wasn't great. I think he was already better than that as a rookie in the NFL, which is huge for his sort of potential and what he can be at the next level. He was another guy I think that was better in the second half of the season, like Paris Johnson. His worst games of the season generally are obvious. They're Max Crosby and the Raiders, they're Myles Garrett and the Browns, and then they're obviously the barbarian Dennis Gardeck and the Cardinals. Okay, that one a little less explainable. But, so those are, again, classic sort of things of got better in the second half. The worst games are the obvious ones against the best players, and generally this was encouraging.
Yeah, I thought coming out, it did look like he was pretty smooth in pass protection, especially his final season at Tennessee. Remember, had that game against Will Anderson where he shut him down that a lot of people were banking on, like, hey, here's Darnell Wright's production. I thought he'd be a little bit better in pass pro. By the way, when you watch Max Crosby play, especially compared to some of these rookies, and the rookies, it's like, man, they're missing something. Crosby's just such an animal out there, just the violence that he plays with and the tenaciousness to win in so many different ways. But yeah, Crosby definitely gave Darnell Wright some problems as he does others. So I thought it was a solid, fine rookie season. I didn't love Wright coming out, so want to see that step forward in year 2. But he looked like a capable starter at right tackle.
But I think
some people loved Darnell Wright though too, really loved him. But I don't think he was as good as maybe some people maybe hyped him up to be.
And I suspect, though I'm not sure without knowing who was hyping him up. I suspect those are the people that loved him as prospects. Once you're reconfirming your priors, right? If you love Darnell Wright as a
prominent media member called him the best player in the draft before the season.
Right. So if you were of that opinion, I'm sure you could find things that you loved about his rookie season, right? But as two people that did not love his tape as a prospect, I was encouraged by what he did as a rookie. I think that could have been a lot worse and would have me reinforcing my priors and going, I told you I didn't love this guy. I don't know.
That's what we do. Yeah.
Right. But I actually think he was much better than that. He really encouraged me in terms of what his outlook will be, given what we expected from it.
I would definitely be more encouraged than discouraged with Wright's rookie season. Pick 11 was Peter Skoronski, Tennessee Titans. Played left guard for the Titans. And another similar season to Darnell Wright, ends up with a 61.5 grade. Okay grades as a pass blocker and a run blocker. This is the story for a lot of the trench players in this draft. And I think it's important to just remind the fans, when you draft a guard, tackle, defensive lineman in the first round, all those positions tend to take 2 years on the D-line, sometimes 3 years on the O-line until guys really break out. Skoronski showed I think he could hold his own, but it was a new position for him as well, moving from tackle to guard.
Yeah, and this is the struggle, I think, with this moving position or projecting a guy to a different spot on the offensive line, because so generally even good young offensive linemen, they're not going to be great in their rookie years. They're going to be okay, right? If you're solid, and like the things we've been talking about with Darnell Wright and Paris Johnson, if you can sort of tick a few boxes of be okay, like be viable, right? Number one, can you just survive out there and do okay and not be a complete disaster every single play? Yes. Did you get better in the second half of the year than the first half of the year? Yes. These kinds of things. If you can sort of tick a few of those boxes, then we can feel good about you going forward into year 2 and beyond, and that's when you take the steps forward. That's when you become really good. But when you're taking a guy like Skoronski, who really amazing college tape at left tackle, had short arms, so we're going to project him into guard, and then he's just okay as a rookie, right? Well, now is he just gonna be okay as a guard, or is this the same sort of pattern from the other two? And he didn't necessarily get dramatically better in the second half of the year. He had a couple of really good games midway through the season, but I don't think he had the same sort of, obviously got improved as the year went on. He was just solid across the board. And now you're like, well, is he better at tackle? Do we even take that risk? Or have we just taken a really good college left tackle, moved him inside to guard where he's okay?
I try to, my take on trying him at tackle. I would give him a shot. I try to let the data kind of tell the story a little bit. If a guy shows that he could be a reasonable starter as a rookie, like Skoronski did, like Darnell Wright did, give them 2 or 3 years and they have a pretty good chance of improving and getting there. So I think overall, good rookie season from Skoronski, in that he can be a guard in the future. I'm just intrigued by what he could have done at tackle with those short arms. 1
penalty in his rookie season, by the way. That's pretty impressive for an offensive lineman.
Absolutely, very good. Pick 12, one of the big surprises of the draft. Jahmyr Gibbs of the Detroit Lions. Gibbs goes number 12, and I think immediately we saw his playmaking ability and the vision that the Lions had for him, as they'd already built this team loaded up on offensive linemen, different types of deep threats and speed all over the place. When Gibbs got in there as a change of pace back, he created a ton of big plays for the Lions.
Yeah, he did. But also I think we saw that, he's just a really good running back. I mean, they were making all this, the justification around drafting him so high was, you're talking about just you can't draft a running back that high. He's just a playmaker to us. He's just an offensive weapon. And whether or not that was just semantics, or whether they actually had this vision for him of some sort of positionless weapon X within the offense, when you just gave him the carries and just said he's just the running back in this offense behind one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, that the passing game is functioning, then he just was an amazing explosive playmaker. And last season in particular, the league has been skewing this way for a while, but explosive, fast, running backs with burst are the guys that are dominating the NFL right now. And Gibbs was maybe the finest exponent of that last season. Just anytime you got him a crease, he had that burst and acceleration to turn that into a huge play.
So Gibbs ends up playing, including the playoffs, 681 snaps. There was a point in the season where David Montgomery was banged up and Gibbs had to take on a bigger workload for a little bit. But I liked what the Lions did to kind of ease him in a little bit. There were some pass protection issues as far as recognition, but he was a weapon in the pass game. And when they did run him, I think they gave him Gibbs-type plays early on. And as you said, eventually when they gave him all the carries, he showed he could do it. But I liked that balance between him and David Montgomery. They did a nice job getting Gibbs into space And to your point, once he got a crease, he could create a big play. And that's what did the Lions pay a premium for that at pick 12? Absolutely, but that's what he gave them, right? Second highest breakaway run rate in the NFL last year. So Gibbs was a playmaker, and I think he's got plenty to build upon in year 2. I'm interested to see how much increase in workload you get here. Just like Bijan Robinson, do you know, not that they were babying him at all, but they definitely eased him in the first half of the season. Does Gibbs start to take over more of the workload in year 2 because of that big play potential? We've seen this a lot through the years, the Tony Pollards of the world, right? It's like Jalen Warren. Hey, the guy that only has 15 touches a game, what if he made that 20? What if he made that 25? Are we going to see that with Gibbs in year 2? That's what I'm interested to see for the Lions. I think he can handle it. But there's something about saving him and putting him in best position to succeed rather than let's just run power because he's the running back.
There's like 2 questions there, right? There's, do you actually hit an area of diminishing returns where you're not better making that player, take all the workload? Like, does having these split backfields maximize the impact, the efficiency that one of those backs has? And if you just gave him the whole workload, you're actually adversely affecting what he can do in the overall. And then there's, did Detroit want to do that even if he could handle more of it? Or do they actually value the split workload and the different types of backs and the contrast between Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs and some of the other players that they've got now, Young behind him? I think those are open questions.
I forgot to reset after the 10 picks.
You did.
Do we want to reset after the first 10?
You could reset, and then I could go get multiple tissues again because apparently I have allergies are just destroying.
Just to review the top 12 picks that we've covered here. First 10, Bryce Young of the Carolina Panthers, C.J. Stroud. Stroud had that 83.1 grade, one of the better quarterback seasons that we've seen. Will Anderson looked like a star right away. So the Texans looks like they hit on their top 2 picks. Didn't get a big enough sample size with Anthony Richardson at 4. Devon Witherspoon at number 5, also looking like a star with his 84.1 PFF grade. Paris Johnson, the 60 grade for him, was much better in the second half of the season than the first half. Tyree Wilson had his struggles for the Raiders at pick 7. And Bijan Robinson, again, for the running back position, looking very good as a rookie at pick 8. We're now on to, we'll reset again every 8, I believe it's going to be. We're on to pick 13 in the Green Bay Packers. It's Lukas Van Ness. And again, Sam, he's one of those guys that a lot of my notes look the same for college in the NFL. He's got the long arm, he's got power, and that was where he got his pass rush wins. But overall, just an okay season and more of a rotational role for Lukas Van Ness, who also, by the way, played mostly on the edge.
Yeah.
Right. He was that like hybrid type of player, and where are you going to use him? Are you going to use him lined up over guards? And the Packers said, nope, we're going to keep him as more of a pure edge rusher. There were a few snaps inside, but we're going to use him as a pure edge rusher. 62.2 grade on 444 snaps for Van Ness last year.
Yeah. So he's such a weird. He's so big. He's such a huge player.
Yeah.
Like, have you seen the picture of him and Cooper DeJean?
I haven't. You're a big picture guy. You like picture analysis.
Well, Cooper DeJean is not an insignificantly sized human being, right? He's a large defensive back. And it looks like somebody has taken Lukas Van Ness and just like, let's take the regular size human and Photoshop him at 150% size. He's so huge. So, yeah, I always felt that he was better as an inside player than he was on the edge. They have kept him on the edge. Again, similar to the Tyree Wilson thing, he actually played quite a lot. You sort of come away from the season, you're like, he didn't really play that much. But he played 400-plus snaps and made very little impact.
And there were some highlights, too. I mean, he tracked down Justin Fields on a sack. He had some good plays, but he's a power player. And that's where most of his wins came from.
Yeah, and he had 6 sacks, which sometimes people will say, actually, that's a pretty good rookie season. But 6 sacks and 22 total pressures. So it's one of those ones where the sacks were way disproportionate relative to his overall pressure rate. It didn't make much of an impact. Like, as a pass rusher, 58.5 PFF grade, that's pretty rough. I do feel like he's being played out of position, but his biggest problem now is that Carl Brooks, who was drafted in at the bottom of the draft, had a really good rookie season inside, right? Now, I think he was an edge rusher who was played inside, but the point being he played really well. So if you were looking at this and saying, all right, what if we moved Lukas Van Ness inside? Would that unlock him? Well, a ton of the snaps that you would be looking to give him now belong to Carl Brooks based off the season that he just had.
I also don't know if I didn't love Van Ness playing out of a 3-point stance last year, and the few times that he was playing inside an edge rusher. I don't know if that's his game either. I mean, honestly, he's the 13th overall pick, so you want more than this.
Right.
But I think he can be an early down edge setter. He is the power and the size that you talk about. That does show up in the run game. Like most rookies, he lost the edge a few times, was out of position, but he is sets a hard edge in the run game. So I think he could be an early down run stop type. But I don't know if there's even a path to that with Rashawn Gary and Preston Smith.
Pass rush
on that team.
Win rate for him, 6.9%.
That was similar. Tyree Wilson range. It was similar. So I think Van Ness, as far as his skill set goes, maybe early down run stopper, and then maybe you move him around on third down, and you get Van Ness out there with Carl Brooks, with Rashawn Gary and Preston Smith. Maybe you have that whole group out there. But I think that's usage pattern-wise, I'd have him on the edge early, and then maybe you move him around as a pass rusher because he's just so limited, right? He doesn't have the burst or the twitch to threaten tackles. You can't just run through everybody, but that's generally Van Ness's game.
Yeah, the problem, I think, though, is that they just have, they've got Carl Brooks, they've got Devontae Wyatt. They now have quite a lot of these obvious interior pass rushing down type players. That's where I think Van Ness belongs, and it feels like his snaps are already accounted for.
All right, let's go to pick 14. Pittsburgh Steelers took Broderick Jones. He ends up moving to right tackle last year for the Steelers. I believe, is he going to move to left tackle this year? I believe he's moving to the left side, back to the left side. Finished with a 57.2 grade. I know there was a lot of hype around Broderick Jones. There was some without breakdowns when Jones took over at right tackle. The Steelers offense did much better. I think there were some other confounding factors there, but overall, I was impressed with a lot of what Jones did in the run game. His explosiveness looked really athletic. He had kind of like what you described with Darnell Wright. He had some highlight reel type of run blocks, but there were a bunch of losses in there as well, and some rough games in pass protection down the stretch for Broderick Jones. But again, overall, similar to what I said with Darnell Wright, Paris Johnson looked reasonable as a rookie, and I think he'll build on that in year two.
Well, he had the sort of reverse. His worst games all came in the second half of the season, which is not the pattern, obviously, that you want to see. But, one of them came against Baltimore. It's one of those ones that makes sense as a bad game.
Colts game was interesting. He lost a ton in pass protection, just hand position-wise. He just looked off from a technique standpoint against the Colts.
And then the wild card game against Buffalo, who at that point didn't really have a pass rush. So it's not encouraging, right? And the games are not necessarily ones that you would expect him to have struggled badly in simply because of the opposition. Baltimore, yes, but the other two, less so. So at the very minimum, he does not fit that pattern that we talked about with Paris Johnson and Darnell Wright of very solid, improving as the year went on, would expect much better things from him year two. He's more, that wasn't a great rookie season. There was definitely some highlights, definitely some flashes, but, did not obviously improve as the year wore on. Were some concerns as the year wore on, and now we need to see him get better year two.
Again, the play that stands out, I think it was against the Titans, where Broderick Jones gets bull rushed back into the backfield on a run play, and Jalen Warren sidesteps him in the backfield and then runs for a 20-plus yard touchdown. A lot of when Broderick Jones is in there, the run game's better and all these different things, but that doesn't always show up on a play-by-play level. And a lot of his quick losses in pass protection, Kenny Pickett's getting rid of the ball pretty quickly. The ball was out quickly. So, look, he also moved, right, because he was first time playing at right tackle last year. Interested to see what happens this year. I think he is talented, moves extremely well. Like I said, his explosiveness in the run game, I think it was useful. He's just got to clean things up from a technique standpoint.
And he started the season playing left tackle as well.
Yeah, so he's moving around just a little bit.
Also, another guy, only 2 penalties, playing tackle. That's at least a feather in his cap in terms of impressive.
All right, pick 15, New York Jets take Will McDonald, edge rusher out of Iowa State. This is your guy, Sam. You love Will McDonald.
I did. I love Will McDonald.
Didn't really have – I mean, you're playing on one of the deepest defensive lines in the NFL. Finishes only with 183 snaps.
Yeah, so he's one of the guys where you look at and you say, okay, he just did not have much of an opportunity to make an impact based off playing time. When you look at his sort of production, on a per-snap basis, he was actually pretty good. Like, grade was solid. His pass rush win rate was 16%, which is basically where Will Anderson's was. Obviously, Will Anderson played like an order of magnitude more snaps and was generally more impressive because of that. But simply from a sort of efficiency standpoint, Will McDonald looked pretty good. It's just that he did not really crack the lineup or even the rotation, and therefore sort of did not back up, preseason. The preseason hype wasn't there in the regular season because he just stopped featuring.
Are there concerns that the Jets, they let Bryce Huff walk, and instead of Will McDonald stepping in to that designated undersized pass rusher role, they get Hassan Reddick in the building to do that instead? So it looks like, I think McDonald's going to have more than 180 snaps this year. Right. He's probably, for this year, I would say, he's a 400 to 500 snap player in a pass rush type of role. But getting him, Reddick, and Jermaine Johnson on the field at the same time, the Jets do have some options there. But they weren't looking at McDonald saying, hey, he's our former first rounder, now he's our starter.
Right.
Where they brought Reddick in to be that guy.
Yeah, though they also got rid of John Franklin Myers, so they're sort of net down a defensive pass rusher, right? So I would say Will McDonald's goal for this year should be to try and be Bryce Huff, to try and be the sort of designated pass rusher specialist, the guy that's playing less snaps than everybody else, but is obviously playing more snaps than he played as a rookie. Let's try and get on the field for those snaps, make an impact, and then, maybe the following year you take a step forward into the full-time starter role, or simply have a first contract that looks like Bryce Huff's, where you're like the multiple years of saying, God, we got to get this guy on the field more. Look at the production he's getting. Like, that's what he needs to try and do. They certainly didn't, they didn't obviously ringing endorsement of saying, okay, we're going to let Bryce Huff go. You are now the Bryce Huff. You're going to play that role. But there's at least a pathway there to a significantly larger role than he had as a rookie.
The real reset here is to explain to people that I have a cut on my forehead.
Did you do that every 8 picks?
Well, the chat is wondering, and they're theorizing. There's a lot of misinformation flowing through the chat here.
What are they saying?
What do you mean?
What are they saying?
It was a wildcat.
I haven't looked at it.
It was a bobcat. What? I got attacked.
Coyote.
Keep
Keep
attack.
the story straight.
Coyote attack.
What's the chat saying?
There's some theories about Just for Men.
Just for men. I don't understand. How does that? You're Rudy Giulianiing it. You're just the sweat is dripping the dye down the head.
Just for Men dye drip.
Yeah,
was the question. That is not true.
Well, no. If that was true, you wouldn't have the graying around the temples.
No, although the graying around the temples might be gone by tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah,
or Wednesday afternoon. We should say the what was it? Bobcat.
Coyote.
The coyote. Come on. The coyote attack is what caused this.
Yeah, not the printer.
Not the printer. Pick 16, Emmanuel Forbes, Washington Commanders.
Ooh.
Not a great rookie season for Forbes, Sam.
Not a great rookie season.
50.9 overall PFF grade.
Yeah.
He was a little better down the stretch, but he did get benched initially.
He did.
He was a little better down the stretch.
He did get benched. I also feel like situation matters, assignment matters, what you're being asked to do matters. Washington, okay, so Emmanuel Forbes is one of these players that is pushing the boundaries for physical requirements, right? So he's listed at 6'1", 180, but what was he actually at the combine? He was like 160 something, wasn't he? Like he's incredibly light, right?
Yeah.
And that showed up in his college tape sometimes. And if you're going to be, let's call him 170 pounds for the sake of generosity. If you're going to be 170 pounds as a corner, to go out there and be told to cover 225-pound A.J. Brown is just not going to go well. It isn't. Like, at the very minimum, if you could get him out of that assignment Why wouldn't you as a defensive coach, right? Instead, Washington just went, good luck, Emmanuel. Let us know how it goes. And it went really badly. So, okay, he struggled badly as a rookie. I do, however, think that some of his struggles could have been avoided had he had a more generous, shall we say, coach.
The interesting thing about his data, right, the coverage grade won't be very good. Forced incompletion percentage, very high. So he was still making a lot of plays on the ball. That was his game. And that was why he went in the first round coming out of Mississippi State, because he was fast and he was a playmaker. There was just so many plays where he looked, he was in position and just wasn't strong enough at the catch point. So what does the outlook look like? I mean, Washington's...
That first Eagles game, by the way, can we just 13 targets, 9 catches, 197 yards, and 2 touchdowns given up. Now, he also had 2 pass breakups in there, so again, if you throw the ball at him enough, he's going to make some plays on it. But if you are a 170-pound corner, do not ask the guy to go out there and cover a guy that outweighs him by 50 pounds.
With Dan Quinn coming in, are we going to see a situation like Deron Bland last year? Like, are there similarities there? Like, Deron Bland was a playmaker and off coverage. He had all the picks. Like, Forbes has those types of ball skills.
And Trayvon Diggs before him.
Yes, and Trayvon Diggs before him. He has those types of skills. However, we also saw Deron Bland, like, oh, by the way, if you're just matched up with DK Metcalf,
right,
you're not a great, just pure man corner going up against some of the best receivers in the league. That could be Forbes right now.
But also Quinn, at the very minimum, has shown a recent history. And he's the one coach from that Seattle scheme, right, where generally speaking, the approach for that group is, this is how we play defense. We just line up and we do it better than you do. He's the one guy from that coaching tree that has shown a consistent desire and capacity to adapt that defense, right? And actually just, you're not going to be Richard Sherman because you're not Richard Sherman, right? We're going to move the defense a bit. We're going to ask you to do different things. We're going to adapt to you because you're different than the guys that were the cookie cutter prototypes for this defense back in the day. He's the one guy that's shown the ability and the desire to adapt his defense. So, look, Emmanuel Forbes can do some things in the NFL. He can be a good corner, but at least from that rookie season, there was the indication that you do need to adapt sometimes and not just ask him to cover a guy that outweighs him by 50 pounds. That just seems stupid.
You get a whole new regime in there in Washington. But Benjamin St-Juste and Michael Davis and James Pierre are the 3 other guys competing at outside corner with Emmanuel Forbes. I think Forbes is going to have to play, and they're going to have to see what they can get out of him. I think there's a way for Dan Quinn to play to his skill set a little bit better, though.
It's an interesting group because two of those guys are similar in terms of big, like long and tall, right? They're long and tall corners, but they're way bigger than Forbes, size-wise. But like you look at that, you're like, there's no obvious one of those 3 that's going to move into the slot because they're sort of they show that obvious body type. I don't know if those are your top 3, if you're going to try and shoehorn one into the slot, or if those are just 3 bodies for 2 spots outside.
All right, let's go to pick 17 now. Oh, no, let's reset.
No, reset.
Reset the next 8. So we mentioned Jalen Carter at 9, one of the better rookie seasons of anybody in the first round. Darnell Wright, Peter Skoronski, both serviceable starters in year 1. Jahmyr Gibbs, a playmaker and running back for the Lions. Lukas Van Ness was a rotational edge. I think he should be an early down run stopper, Sam, moving forward. Broderick Jones, another serviceable type of tackle for the Steelers at 14. Will McDonald, we'll see if he ends up with more than 180 snaps this year. And then Emmanuel Forbes, just talking about him and trying to find a path to the field for Forbes this year after a disappointing rookie season. So we're on to pick 17, Christian Gonzalez of the New England Patriots. He was off to a promising start, 79.3 coverage grade, but gets hurt after just week 4. Gets hurt during the week 4 game, just 209 snaps for Christian Gonzalez, but size and athleticism was on display early in the season.
Yeah, absolutely. Ton of hype around him based off not just the draft, but his preseason, his training camp, etc. 4 games against good offenses, Philadelphia, Miami, the Jets, and Dallas, was playing well. Now, weakest game was against Dallas, and the Philadelphia game wasn't phenomenal either, but really good against Miami, good against the Jets, and then injury shuts him down. So we don't know what he's going to be. But, he always had the physical tools, the size, the movement skills. And at least in 2 of his 4 games that we saw, he translated that to performance and production.
Yeah, the Miami game's the one where I think a lot of the hype came from. He had that big interception against Tyreek Hill. Interestingly enough, playing free safety, right? He was in a free safety role. Tua just kind of chucked it up, and Gonzalez looks like Ed Reed, just over here, like flips his hips, goes and gets it. But the athleticism and size, and as you said, like some of that based off of training camp hype and what other people saw beyond his 200 snaps on the field. But I think future's bright for Gonzalez if he comes back healthy.
Yeah, certainly the potential is there for him to be a really high-level corner.
There we go. Is that it?
I mean, there's not much to say at the end of 4 games.
There wasn't much else to say. One of the interesting thing about his landing spot is you didn't love him as a prospect, but you said, look, size, athleticism, add Bill Belichick to the mix.
Right.
Okay, that's a great fit. You lose the Belichick factor here.
You lose the highest 2 ranking Belichick.
There's one Belichick
still have
left.
The 3rd ranked Belichick.
True. So maybe that'll be the thing.
Right.
But definitely a good start to the rookie season for Christian Gonzalez. Disappointing injury for him though. Pick 18, back to the Detroit Lions. It's Jack Campbell at linebacker. Campbell, guy I liked coming out. I thought he looked like a rookie last year overall linebacker. The Lions had a pretty deep group of linebackers. He didn't have to play a ton. But when he did get out there, it looked like they were picking on him just a little bit. Opposing offenses, 748 total snaps for Campbell. Was very good in the run game, but from a coverage standpoint, some of the stuff at Iowa, passes behind him, things that a lot of young linebackers struggle with, I thought that's what Campbell struggled with.
Yeah, young linebackers struggle with it, and also I think generally just it's tough now. It's tougher in today's NFL than it's ever been for those linebackers. So he had a coverage grade of 35, passes into his coverage, gave up a passer rating of 124. These are all bad things. And yeah, like he just doesn't have the feel yet for how to maximize, how to squeeze those throwing lanes, where the routes are going to hit, where his landmarks need to be exactly, and he was too easy to exploit. But number one, even good established NFL veterans are struggling in the same way because the league is just a nightmare for those guys now. And number two, it is generally the last thing to come for young linebackers. So, yeah, like similar story, I think, to the offensive tackles that we talked about. Like he was as expected in terms of the run defense was good, tackling was good, athleticism was there. Overall, it was okay because of this one area that is generally the last thing to come.
Yeah, the biggest thing, you even saw that at Iowa, the passes getting in behind the linebackers, the stuff that when you're watching the game on TV, it's just like, oh, look, there's a 20-yard pass, and you don't realize maybe linebackers out of position or whatever it might be. That happened a little bit too often for Campbell last year, but I thought some good stuff to build upon there. Just got to get a little bit cleaner as far as seeing the field. And they were trying to ease him in a little bit too. He had to play a lot more down the stretch. I think there's a path to the field for Campbell again this year, so they can they liked him a lot, picking him at 18, right? A lot of, I think on the consensus board, he was closer to 40, but the Lions really loved him, threw him out there right around midseason for a lot more action. And again, I think he had some rookie ups and downs, but something to build on with Campbell in year two. All right, let's go to pick 19. Tampa Bay Bucks, it's Calijah Cancey, defensive tackle out of Pittsburgh. A lot of hype for Cancey. He ended up with 4 regular season sacks, according to the NFL. He was a very good pass rusher, though, and they used him in that role, almost twice as many pass rush snaps as run defense snaps. And I think that was the story of Cancey's rookie season. Made some big-time splash plays as a pass rusher, but got absolutely wrecked in the run game at times as well.
Yeah, so that was, I mean, I guess that sort of makes sense for the classic undersized defensive tackle, like 6'1", 281 pounds. So he's similar in weight to Aaron Donald, but is taller, and has shorter arms, right? And obviously doesn't have like Aaron Donald levels hand usage. I mean, it's certainly not right now. So
30 and 5/8 inch arms.
Yeah. So short arms.
4th percentile for Calijah.
Short arms at an incredibly low weight and a little bit longer than a guy like Aaron Donald, who's incredibly low, down to the ground, etc., and has like some of the greatest hand usage you've ever seen from a defensive tackle. So you sort of take away the thing that makes Aaron Donald special, and now you see the concerns with why those guys generally are, not necessarily drafted at the top of the draft. Even Donald slid to the midway down the first round because this is what can happen to those players. Like Cancey was just marmalized from a run defense point of view.
Marmalized, huh?
Now, pass rushing. So, number one, he got hurt earlier in the season. So we missed, right at the start of the season, we missed a chunk of games. Didn't play the full season, was coming back from that. But was good as a pass rusher, did see the impact that he can make, and ended the season with his best performances. Like in the playoffs against two of the better teams and two of the better offensive lines, he had really good pass rushing games.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron Donald comps are always unfair. I always thought
Right.
Ed Oliver was a cleaner comp here because, look, Ed Oliver also got can he be the next Aaron Donald comp? And then when you watched Ed Oliver's tape at Houston, it's like, well, again, size looks similar. You could say the burst even looks similar. The hand usage and actual football playing.
That's the thing that makes
never
Donald
look.
special.
That's
Yeah.
what makes Donald special, right? Cancey has similarities, right? So you've got the burst. You can explode into the backfield, but are you going to shed blocks, make plays consistently over and over again? I think Cancey, if we're looking for his projection, similar to Ed Oliver's path through the NFL the first few years, Ed Oliver, better pass rusher than run defender. And there were times where he was absolutely exploited in the run game. Would he knife into the backfield and make a big play? Absolutely. Did Cancey do that sometimes? Absolutely. Actually had a high run stop percentage, but a low run defense grade, meaning he made plays in and around the line of scrimmage. He also got blocked quite a bit and far too easily. So I'm interested to see with Cancey, can he improve that just a little bit to get on the field more consistently? As you mentioned, started the season slow too. I think you give Tyree Wilson and Calijah Cancey not a pass, but it's a challenge when you miss training camp time or you miss early season time with the injury.
Yeah, if you miss a chunk of your rookie season, I think it's a really tough thing to try and come back from. Even independent of, you've no idea if they came back at 100% or if that's just when they were good to go, and they weren't really battling at 100% at that point. So a couple of questions for him. Number one, can he get better against the run, or are we going to have, I guess, his ceiling now liability against the run and impact pass rusher? And then number two, like as impressive as he was as a pass rusher, we need that next step because if you're going to be that bad against the run game, you need to be an impact pass rusher. And he was good, but at least until the playoffs was not an impact pass rusher. And then obviously those two playoff games. I mean, those are two games with an 80-plus pass rushing grade against two of the top 5 offensive lines in the NFL. That was really encouraging right at the end of the season.
That's a big reason why Cancey's getting hyped up as like, hey, year 2 breakout type of player, and I think that's fair. Again, all the defensive linemen tend to take their jump in year 2, and I think we could see that from Cancey.
I mean, arguably the best game of his entire season came against the best competition in terms of the Philadelphia Eagles, the best offensive line in the NFL. That was the only game he had where the overall game grade was above 80. It was one of his 2 pass rushing grades above 80. He had 6 pressures. He had a sack. Like, that was the game. We've been excusing bad games because they come against the best opposition. His best game came against the best opponent.
Are you ready to talk some receivers?
Sure.
Receiver run. Pick 20, Seattle Seahawks, Jaxon Smith-Njigba. The first receiver off the board, and first of 4 here. Another guy that started slow because of injury, hand injury early in the season, affected his drop rate. To me, those are the 2 biggest things, right? Dropped about 11% of his passes. Contested catches was well below average, but then other times it was like, man, now I see why he was a first rounder. So a little up and down for JSN in year 1.
Yeah, it was. The other question I think that he had coming into the NFL was, is he just going to be a slot guy, or can he play outside? Can he be more effectively in the NFL than he was in college? 69% of his snaps inside as a slot receiver. So still a little bit TBD, had played outside a little bit, but was primarily a slot guy. It was okay as a rookie season, like flashed some potential, flashed some ability, but certainly didn't make the kind of impact that the people that had him at the top of their rookie rankings or receiver rankings, draft rankings would have been expecting.
He was on his way to starting like that second half narrative. He'd had a bunch of games with 4, 6, 7 catches, and then slowed down a little bit the last couple weeks of the season. But I still have high expectations for JSN, and I don't know if he overtakes Tyler Lockett on the depth chart this year necessarily. Maybe he steals some snaps.
It's a good so. The pathway, I think, will be there for him to do that. Like Tyler Lockett looks like he's on the way down at this point, declining, hitting that point. Like if JSN is going to become that type of player, it's going to happen now because they would like it to happen now. Like they need him to sort of take that step forward.
But yeah, I mean, even if Lockett, salvages another year or two playing on the outside, let's say it's him and Metcalf on the outside, I still like JSN as potentially one of the better slot receivers in the NFL this year. I think he has a chance to I don't think he's going to drop passes the way he did last year. I think that was the most disappointing part of his game, was he was fundamentally sound and ran good routes, and maybe he wasn't as dynamic as Garrett Wilson or Chris Olave as an outside receiver in that full, complete wide receiver skill set. But as a dependable slot receiver that just had a good feel for the game, I think JSN still has that, and I think he has a chance to do that as wide receiver 3 this year, and again, maybe stealing some snaps from Lockett.
Yeah, I think if you were concerned about his limitations as a draft prospect, his rookie year did nothing to dissuade you from that concern, right? Like he's not a contested catch guy. He's not particularly devastating after the catch. Those things, right? Now, can he operate? Can he run good routes? Can he sort of get to the right spot? Can he exploit zone? Can he get open? Yeah, these are all things, but it's the value add. It's like, can he be more than just a solid, primarily slot option? I don't know yet, based off what we saw.
It's a little bit better after the catch, even than I had expected last year. Had a lot of opportunities, but I'm expecting bigger things in year 2 for JSN. Quentin Johnston's the next receiver. He goes pick 21 to the Los Angeles Chargers. Finishes with 38 catches for 431 yards and 2 touchdowns. And he'll have opportunities this year, Sam. Again, I think some of his college limitations, though, showed up as a rookie.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't think either one of us was particularly high in Quentin Johnston as a draft prospect. And yet, even with that low bar, he underwhelmed and did not impress. That was a concerning rookie year, I think, for him. Like, just didn't make an impact. They needed him to be a bigger player than he was for them, and they were fairly unable to carve even a situational, even a one-dimensional role for him. 0.88 yards per route run. That's awful. That's terrible. So, like you're now looking at him and saying, okay, that was a disaster. But what does he do well, and can we create a role for that? And now you've got a new coaching staff trying to do it. The one interesting wrinkle in all this is, like, arguably the best game he's ever had in his life came against Jim Harbaugh's Michigan Wolverines in the college football playoffs, who had an amazing defense. So Harbaugh, of all people, should have a fairly good idea of, like, what's the most devastating thing this guy can do. Let's do a lot of that.
The challenge when you have a 6'3", big-bodied receiver, right, and just some data points to describe the skill set for Quentin Johnston here. He was open on about 30% of his single targets. That's one of the lowest percentages in the league. 0th percentile.
0th.
Yeah, so down at the bottom.
Bad.
And then he only caught 32% of his contested catches. That's 17th percentile. So we always talk about George Pickens all the time. Does he separate well all the time? Not necessarily, but when you throw it up, overall, he's going to catch 50 to 60% of his contested catches. Quentin Johnston has the body to be a big contested catch receiver, but he didn't do it in college, and he didn't do it in the NFL. And then overall hands just aren't great anyway. They were a little better last year in the NFL, but just general hands when he is open, not great. So that's the challenge with Johnston. What you mentioned about the Michigan game, he had a 71-yarder catch and run, and I wonder if that sticks in Harbaugh's mind as like a catch and run guy, and that you actually want to get him the ball in space because he's pretty fast, He can move pretty well.
Didn't he have one deep ball and then one like shallow drag that he took to the house?
Yeah.
Like it was the classic sort of things. Like we have a very one-dimensional but very fast player. Well, how can we get him the ball?
He runs 4.5 at that size, which is good. And I wonder how much, with good vertical and broad, like good explosiveness, I do wonder if that is the path here. But I don't think either of us like him as, hey, line up at X,
right?
Go beat press coverage, go run the whole route tree, go separate and be the alpha number one wide receiver. I don't know that Quentin Johnston has that in him.
No, I mean I'm now looking at him, and didn't they sign DJ Chark?
They did, yeah.
I'm actually looking at him like a DJ Chark, which is okay. You are a limited receiver who can actually put together like 1,000-yard impact type of season, but it's just with 2 or 3 routes, and then you're not going to do other things. There's
also only a handful of receivers who can like give you a headache, right? Like that. And DJ Chark's one of those guys.
Yeah.
And Quentin Johnston might be one of those guys where it's just, man, why?
Well, the thing,
a key drop, key bad plays in there. Not just like he disappeared for a while as a receiver, but like some impact plays on the negative side. Johnston has that ability, but he also has a little bit of that upside because of the size and movement skills.
As not great as he is overall, the things that he has in his arsenal are things that are very difficult to deal with, right? Like if you are a 6-foot, 190-pound corner who runs, in the 4.5s or whatever, Quentin Johnston is bigger, longer, and faster than you are, right? And even if he's not a great receiver, that's a problem sometimes. If he gets a run on you, or if they're able to scheme him a free release, or if you have to wade through some traffic, these are problems that you might not be able to fix through being a better overall player because it's just a physical tool that he has. There's like he does have skills. It's not like he's a complete waste of space. And the things that he is good at should be able to be carved into a role at the next level. But I think now, based off that rookie season, you're looking at him and saying, okay, he's a role player, not like a number one impact receiver.
All right, let's go to pick 22, the third wide receiver in a row off the board. Zay Flowers to the Baltimore Ravens. Very nice rookie season for Zay Flowers. He had 858 yards as a receiver to go with 5 touchdowns, another 56 yards on the ground, and a score. I thought he added a very nice horizontal type of dynamic to the Ravens offense, an offense that had the running game, has Lamar as a runner, and then Zay Flowers adding a dynamic threat. He got behind the defense a couple times as well, but they used him a ton on some short stuff and yak type of plays as well.
Yeah, so Zay Flowers is an interesting one because a lot of people loved him at draft time. There was a significant minority of people that had him as wide receiver 1 in that draft class, right? And if you were of that group, like the confirming your priors thing, if you were the people that had Zay Flowers as wide receiver 1, you could easily look at that rookie season and say, told you, he's amazing. Look at him. Look at these plays. Equally, if you were somebody that hated Zay Flowers and looked at his tape, you could say, okay, he's still just a kind of gimmick, right? The truth is probably somewhere in the middle, which is he moves uniquely, right? The thing that reminded me, the player that he reminded me of at draft time was like Dante Hall, the old Kansas City punt returner / slot receiver, but in a world where people knew what to do with that, right? Dante Hall, they were like, oh, he's amazing as a punt returner, one of the best the game has ever seen. How do we get the ball into this guy's hands more? And it's like, well, let's make him a slot receiver. And it's like, okay, yeah, a little bit, but they weren't good at manufacturing touches for guys like that. Like, same reason Peter Warwick just wasn't a particularly good NFL player because the NFL didn't know what to do with guys like Peter Warwick. I think now the NFL is much better at knowing how to get the ball in the hands of guys like that. Now, maybe it's also true that Zay Flowers is more than that. And there were plays in his rookie season where he made more of a vertical impact than that. And he was able to use some of that route running ability and unique movement skills to create vertical plays. And, his average depth of target was 9 yards downfield. That's not insignificant. Like, that's not just... So Rashee Rice, who was a slot receiver, his average depth of target was 5, right?
Zay was 20th percentile in ADOT. it did feel like there was a lot of schemed up gimmick plays.
Yeah, so
but you're
there were.
right. But there was a few plays where he's getting behind the defense and using his speed.
And enough of them that his average at the target. So it's not like it's high, but it's not, it's not he's purely a horizontal gimmick underneath guy. His average at the target was 4 yards higher than somebody like Rashee Rice, who was largely taking those manufactured, underneath horizontal plays. So I think Zay Flowers was really impressive as a rookie. I still think he's surviving predominantly on manufactured targets, and I don't know how much more than that he can be, but ultimately he doesn't need to be. Like, he's so good at the manufactured stuff, and today's offenses are so good at exploiting that. Why do we need him to be more than that?
Yeah, I mean, I was impressed with Zay Flowers' rookie season. There was a lot of nothing plays in there as far as the manufactured stuff, but again, even when it felt like he was disappearing for a little bit, every now and again he's getting behind the defense and has a big play opportunity. Of course, Ravens fans are going to remember him for a ton of receiving yards in the AFC Championship, but the fumble lost at the goal line, which was huge. But that's not what summed up Zay Flowers' rookie season. It was a good rookie season for Zay Flowers.
Yes.
And I think that role continues to expand in year 2.
Third among rookies overall, including the postseason in terms of yardage. Sixth in terms of yards per route run. So, productive player, but productive player who we just don't know exactly what he can do yet. But I think definitely he flashed the ability to be more than just a gimmick.
Pick 23, the fourth receiver in a row, Minnesota Vikings took Jordan Addison, and I thought he had a really nice rookie season as well, especially when Justin Jefferson got hurt. Addison took on a little bit more of a workload. Really nice rookie season, and it gives the Vikings an excellent 1-2 punch heading into 24.
Yeah, led all rookie receivers in touchdowns, was fourth in overall yardage, where is he in yards per route run? A little bit lower.
I didn't realize he had 10 touchdowns last year.
Yeah, ninth in yards per route run. So, I was impressed by Addison. He was also a guy where, what did we just say? Fourth in terms of yardage. I don't know how much yardage he left out there by either drops or not drops, but hits that dislodged a pass that should have been a big play. You know what I mean? He seemed to have 4 or 5 of those. More than one of them were touchdowns as well, where the ball's in his hands in the area to make a big play, and then somebody comes in with a hit. And this is where you're sort of wondering, that happens sometimes, right? That happens to every receiver in the NFL. Does it happen more when you weigh 175 pounds? Like, does the same hit dislodge the touchdown for A.J. Brown that it dislodged for Jordan Addison? Your gut instinct says no, and actually that's where being 175 pounds in Addison's case manifests as a problem, that you're going to be easier to separate from the football than some of these other guys. But route running, getting open, runs after the catch were really good as well. Like, he's a good receiver, and that's my only question is, he's a good receiver. Is he going to be easier to separate from the football once it arrives than others?
I tweeted about this last year during the season as a bit of a joke, but is there truth to this? Jordan Addison, let's look at his quarterbacks that he's been associated with.
Yeah.
2021, Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett goes from mediocre college starter to 90-plus PFF grade, star college quarterback his last year and first-round pick. And then Pickett falls off when he doesn't have Addison anymore. Addison goes to USC. Caleb Williams, Heisman Trophy. Addison leaves USC, goes to the NFL. Caleb Williams, not as great his next year. And then at the time that I had put this out there, Justin Jefferson was hurt, and Addison stepped in, and they kept producing at the time. And look, it was a bit of a joke, but I wonder if there is something there. He's not A.J. Brown. He's not Tyreek Hill as a elevate your quarterback type of guy, but he does have this history of Kenny Pickett, Caleb Williams.
The wit
out stuff with Addison. I think it matters more than it does for tackles. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Offensive tackles, defensive tackles. The wit out stuff does matter for receivers.
I mean, it's not an unreasonable point to make that Jordan Addison in your offense probably makes your offense significantly better and is helping your quarterback. Like, he knows what he's doing. He understands where to be, how to get there. My only question with him, literally, is that separating thing, like the separating from the football thing. Like, people were concerned for him as a prospect because of his physical tools, right? He was 5'11", 175 pounds, and unlike a lot of those small nippy guys, he ran a 4.5 basically, right? And that's a worrying combination. Like if you were 5'11", 175, but you ran a 4.3 flat, okay, fine, we could deal with that. 4.5 was a little bit weird, and that I think scared a lot of people. I don't think his speed isn't a problem, never has been. I don't even think his size is a problem, but the only area where it might show up is you do seem to be able to hit the guy hard and dislodge the football. It just seems to be a reality of his rookie season based off what we saw. So, and even if that's a permanent problem going forward, I'm okay with it. I think he can still be a good player. If that was just variance, though, and he had like 4 or 5 of those plays go against him and those don't happen next year, he could be incredibly good next year.
No, I like Addison quite a bit. I think he has a chance to be, again, the combo with him and Justin Jefferson are one of the better number 2s in the NFL. I think Addison has that opportunity here. Pick 24 was the New York Giants taking Deonte Banks, the cornerback out of Maryland. He played in 15 games, coverage grade in the high 40s. A little up and down for Deonte Banks coming out of Wink Martindale's scheme. Again, that puts corners on an island quite a bit, and they didn't really have the same type of pass rush getting home this year.
Yeah, I thought so. He had a season that reminded me a little bit of, it might have been his rookie season, the season Eric Stokes had right at the start of his career, whether it was year 1 or year 2, I can't remember, where he was in really tight coverage all the time. Didn't necessarily mean that the ball didn't get through sometimes, but he was all over the guy almost all the way through consistently. And you're like, that's the hardest thing to do as a corner, right? Number one, can you just stay in sticky coverage the whole time? Number two, then we can work on the ball playing ability. We can work at the catch point stuff. We can work on that, like turning that into incredible production. But like step one is, can you just stay with the guy? Deonte Banks was really good. Maybe it may have been the best of the rookie corners at just staying with the guy, despite, as you say, Wink Martindale's defense, like ask him to do that basically every play, right?
Yep.
Go out there, stick to your man, don't let him go away from you. We need that. That's a problem if it happens. So he was all over the guy all the time, but did give up some plays, did give up 5 touchdowns, etc. It's difficult. I don't like Eric Stokes being my comp for this because Stokes didn't get better. It's like the first step was there, and then he just didn't stay at that level. But I was really encouraged by that overall rookie impact of he stuck very, very well to receivers.
I mean, that was a lot of what we saw at Maryland, right? I mean,
that's why they drafted him there.
Yeah, even when he got beaten, maybe right off the line or whatever, he had the speed and the movement skills were absolutely incredible. I don't think he was always been a great, just pure football player, just a pure, like when you watch Patrick Surtain play cornerback, right, you're like, he knows exactly what's happening, and he might not be the fastest, but he's always going to be in position. Whereas Banks might not always be in position, but has the speed to get back there.
And now you have the question of, well, now you're transitioning away from a Wink Martindale defense towards a much more zone-oriented one, like that theoretically is playing to the opposite strengths, like the theoretical weaknesses of Branch.
Yeah, so that's the one of Banks. Yeah,
sorry,
that's the one.
Banks.
And that's the question that I have here, because I do think like when they were drafted, I was like, yeah, he's the type of corner that fits Wink and will be on an island all the time. Again, there were some bad plays in there last year where I think it was Devontae Adams getting behind him. I mean, some of the better receivers though, right? You're going to be matched up and you're gonna lose sometimes. But it was fine overall for Banks. I'm interested to see what the new system looks like for him, because I thought he needed some time to just develop as a pure football player, but the athleticism and movement skills evident coming out of college and as a rookie.
We're going to get a much better idea now of, are his weaknesses from you should have used that term, just football player. Like, are they mental deficiencies in what he's being asked to do, or are they technique problems? Like, does he not understand how to play those types of defenses more? Or is it a technique and a translating what he understands how to do into the production? I think we're going to get a better idea this year of, obviously the physical tools are there. Like, he can stick to a receiver closely play in, play out, whether or not he can make the play at the catch point. He's always all over the guy. But now we're going to ask you to play zone. We're going to ask you to have your eyes on the quarterback. We're going to ask you to diagnose plays, route concepts, and you need to understand where to be, how to get there, how to move from A to B to C within your zone. Can you do that? And then can you make the play on the ball, et cetera?
I like this going player by player. Let's reset the last 8 picks here. We're going through the 2023 first rounders pick by pick here. Chris Gonzalez had a promising season before his injury at pick 17. Pick 18, Jack Campbell for the Lions. Calijah Cancey for the Bucks was the grade overall is not great, but it's because of the run defense, holding him down. He was an outstanding pass rusher for a rookie defensive tackle. Then the wide receiver run, of which I'd say Zay Flowers and Jordan Addison were the most impressive rookies. And then we just talked about Deonte Banks and his up and down season as a rookie for the Giants. So we're moving on to pick 25 in the first round, 2023. Buffalo Bills took Dalton Kincaid, the tight end out of Utah. And we thought they might make him a big part of their offense. And as the season progressed, Sam, they absolutely did that.
Yeah, they did. I think overall Kincaid was really impressive. Maybe not like it almost feels like Sam Laporta stole Dalton Kincaid's thunder, Like it's so hard for rookie tight ends to have an incredible impact and, be really productive right away. They almost never do. So Kincaid coming out of that season, including the playoffs with like 100 targets, 80 catches, 777 yards. If Laporta didn't exist, you'd be like, it's a really incredible rookie season. But Laporta was more impressive in literally every single category. So it sort of conditions a little bit how you feel about Kincaid. But I think overall he was really impressive. All the things that we saw in college, they're there. He understands, has a really high sort of level of knowledge about defenses, not just how to get open, but how to maximize the separation to get open. Good hands, good athleticism. And they didn't ask him to block that much. So even if it's a weakness, it's not important right now.
Yeah, it was an interesting season for Kincaid because he had a lot of catches. There were definitely some games where it looked like they were feeding him a lot in the short area. He didn't do it. You mentioned Laporta. Laporta had some spectacular plays, right? Became a red zone weapon, made some big plays. Kincaid didn't have a ton of just explosive, flashy plays. Like you described him. You may have used a Travis Kelce type of comp.
Yeah. Like
the feel that he had for the game. Like those were his best plays. It was like, hey, I know where to sit down and find the soft spot in the zone. I know where to be for my quarterback. And remember, there was a point in Josh Allen's career where you said, hey, sit back and cover 2 and make him read it out and find an open receiver in zones. And he's certainly much better at that now. But that's what Kincaid does, right? Adjust off of the scramble drill when needed. I mean, that's
but not just
what you saw in year 1 from Kincaid.
The reason, so the thing that got the Travis Kelce comp is I think there's a lot of players that understand how to get to the open spot in zone and sit there, right? I think there's quite a lot of players that can look at that, understand where the defense is going to be, get yourself to the middle of the gap, right? What Travis Kelce does at an incredibly high level, and Dalton Kincaid was doing in college, is figuring out, okay, that's where the space is going to be between these two guys. That's where I ultimately need to get to. But I'm not going to run straight there. What I'm going to do is wrong foot one of the two guys that are either side of that space, and I'm going to get him moving in the wrong direction. I'm actually going to make the space bigger so that by the time I arrive there, it's even bigger than it would have been if I just run to that point straight away. Like, Kelce is able to manipulate the space in addition to getting to it. Kincaid was doing that in college as well. I think we saw bits and pieces of that in his rookie season. That, to me, is ridiculously high level. There are not many players, even veterans, that understand how to do that at a high level. There are a lot of players that understand that's where the space is. I'm going to go there and turn around.
You're absolutely right about Kincaid as well. Like, protected as far as the run game goes. Only 252 snaps in line, almost 400 in the slot, 140 out wide. I mean, he was, as expected, right? A Kelce-like glorified receiver, big slot type of player. What are you smiling at?
It's just the chat right now.
What?
There's a guy in there with let's say a blue tinted name who doesn't want us to, who thinks that we wouldn't read out that full name.
I probably won't.
I think we could get away with that.
Hugh?
Yeah.
You will not read out Hugh's full name. All right.
Coward.
Dalton Kincaid, Bills, 73 catches for 673 last year. I'm expecting more in year 2, especially, tight ends they take some time as well.
They do, and it's fascinating in particular in Buffalo because there's no Stephon Diggs, and we've been talking about this absence of a true X receiver and this abundance of slot options. Like, what does this offense look like now in Buffalo? Are they going to run this thing through multiple slot/tight end weapons inside? Like, is Kincaid set for a season where he becomes, like, by far the leading target generator within that Buffalo offense, and he's going to get 180 targets and be the primary receiver even if he's the slot option?
All right, let's go to pick 26. Dallas Cowboys take Mazi Smith, defensive tackle out of Michigan. Mazi started the season a little slow during the preseason, didn't get much better, 308 total snaps. I didn't realize the weight loss question. I didn't realize that he had lost so much weight until after the season. But yeah, he struggled anchoring in the preseason. That carried over during the regular season, showed some flashes as a pass rusher, but not great overall for Mazi Smith. And I don't know why he had to lose weight as a 340-pounder.
So this is the thing. I have sometimes, we're covering all 32 teams. It's difficult to get in-depth, granular information on every single player in the NFL, and sometimes we come up short. Has there been an actual final evaluation and analysis and explanation for what the hell the game plan was with Mazi Smith? Because remember, Dallas has had this defensive line with good edge rushers that has had a chronic weakness of play up the middle and being run all over. And Mazi Smith was the guy. Dallas tends to alternate, right? We draft best player available, or we have an acute need and we fill that in round 1. Mazi Smith was the acute need filling in round 1. We need a big run-stuffing nose tackle to come in and shore up this run defense. So they draft a 337-pound, 6'3" nose tackle in the first round. You're like, all right, cool. And then they ask him to lose an absolute shit ton of weight. And some of the pictures are nuts. You look at that guy lined up with the All-22, and he's like smaller than the other defensive tackle alongside him who's listed at like 300 and something, right? Like, what the hell just happened to this guy? And consequently, Mazi Smith didn't offer much as a pass rusher because he was never going to, and was terrible in the run game because he lost 30 pounds or whatever, and he no longer has like the thing that he brought to the table to be a really good run defender. So, A, what the hell were they asking him to do and why? And B, what is going to happen going forward with him?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at like Mazi's good plays last year, were shoot the gap, kind of explosive,
which is just not his game.
Which isn't his game. And the anchor was non-existent, right? I mean, he didn't have the type of balance or any sort of anchor to do much against the run. And that started in the preseason, right? There were plays in the preseason where he was driven off the ball 8-9 yards down the field. So yeah, it's interesting because coming out of Michigan, he could two-gap a little bit. He leveraged against doubles really well. He did the thing that I think Dallas wanted, which was the big-bodied, hold the point type of nose tackle. Now, we could argue, do you want to pick that at pick 26?
Right.
I don't know if you want to pick that at pick 26. But I thought that's what they drafted. A guy he wasn't a great polished pass rusher in college, but he could at least hold the point.
Well,
and then let everyone else do their work in Dallas, right? All the edge rushers and keep the linebackers clean and all that old school stuff. But he didn't have that last year, so it was kind of a lost rookie season, I think, for Mazi Smith.
Like, it is what they drafted, but they didn't ask him to be something completely different.
Right. I know.
That's so strange. And then it's not like they're unaware that he was struggling as a rookie. Like Jerry Jones said after the draft, like, he needs to get way better. Like, okay, but you also need to stop asking him to be a different player than the one that he was. Like, I don't understand what happened with Mazi Smith. I don't understand if they're planning on fixing it. Remember, new defensive coaching staff now. Mike Zimmer comes in. Is Mike Zimmer going to look at this guy and have a completely different opinion than the previous coaching staff did? I just don't get what happened with Mazi Smith last year, except that whatever it was had disastrous consequences.
Yeah, as far as the outlook, it's tough to predict exactly what they're going to do. I would say if they let him play at 320, 325, 330, a more reasonable weight for Mazi Smith, he can be your hold the point type of nose tackle. I don't think he'll ever be great. I don't think he'll be as good as like a DJ Reader or anything at nose, but I think he can at least hold the point and be a reasonable enough pass rusher, push in the pocket.
And even if you thought for whatever reason that he was this guy is an impact three technique trapped in the body of a nose tackle in college, and he'll be better. Like if for some reason you saw a couple of weird plays that convinced you that he was a different player in a different position, just trapped in a different role, and you were like, let's get him to lose 30 pounds and suddenly we'll have the next Aaron Donald on our hands. Like whatever the thought process was there, if that was what you thought, that idea should be set on fire and burned and no longer applicable based off his rookie season, right? So minimum, regardless of why you did that, the approach this year should be let's turn him back into the player he was in college and hope that that's a good player.
At least what he should be.
Yeah.
All right, let's go pick 27, Jacksonville Jaguars. They drafted Anton Harrison, the offensive tackle out of Oklahoma. Harrison moved to the right side with the Jags, and I think we saw some of the strengths and weaknesses that we saw at Oklahoma. He had never graded above 74 as a run blocker at OU. That's not a great number for a first-round draft pick, and last year finishes with a 45.8. Run blocking grade just doesn't have the type of power, sustain in the run game, really. And I think, not that it's all Harrison's fault, but that was the Jags' O-line kind of in a nutshell last year. They were not doing any favors for Travis Etienne and company.
Not just last year. They've been one of the more one-dimensional offensive lines in the NFL for a couple of years now in terms of they're much better pass blocking than they are as a run blocking unit.
And then if you just look at pass blocking, Harrison, similar to some of the other tackles, if you just look at the splits, first half of the year versus second, several good games from a pass pro standpoint down the stretch, but run blocking never really caught up. So Harrison finishes with a 54.6 overall grade as a rookie.
Yeah, run blocking for him, definitely a weakness. Pass blocking is interesting because it's very inconsistent. He basically either played very well in a game or pretty badly and almost nothing in the middle. And they're not necessarily determined by opponent.
He got beat up by Chris Jones in week 2. That was when they kept putting Jones outside.
Right. And he was still an edge rusher at that point.
Exactly.
But yeah, so he had like basically a perfect game in pass protection against the Atlanta Falcons, who don't have any edge rushers. That makes sense. But he also had a really good game with 0 pressures allowed against the Houston Texans, right? Who do have some edge rushers, whether it's Jonathan Grenard or Will Anderson. Like either way, they had somebody pretty good over him, and he held up perfectly. So he had just an inconsistent that was, as you say, better in the second half than the first half, but some very high level. Like if you took his best 6-7 games, that's a really, really good run of pass blocking games. But his worst 7 would have been borderline non-viable. So what does that inconsistency shake out to in year 2?
Another one of those guys where he played left tackle for his 3 years in college, moves to the right. So is that part of the transition? Because he moves really well. He's nimble. He can get in position in the run game. It's just a technique and locking onto blocks type of issue, I think, for Harrison a lot of the time. So I think there's potential to move forward. But again, if the Jags want to get better in the run game, Harrison, I hate using the word finesse. It's just my way of describing better pass blocker than run blocker. But they drafted a finesse type of tackle, and that's what they got, I think, in year 1. What do you...
Do we need to get our version of cogent for finesse?
How many times have I said that? Have I said it a lot?
No, you're just saying you don't like using it. So I'm saying we could dive into thesaurus and get a synonym for
give me a finesse.
For finesse.
What's another word for a finesse tackle?
Guile.
He has guile?
Apparently. The guile doesn't seem like that close a synonym for finesse.
Guile suggests 12-year veteran.
Right.
It's like Jason Peters has guile.
So guile and savvy are in the same synonym list for finesse. Guile and savvy are quite similar. They don't appear to be that similar.
Finesse is a whole different descriptor for football players.
What else we got here? Artful?
No.
No?
He's none of those things. All right, let's go. Pick 28, Cincinnati Bengals, Myles Murphy. Where's Myles Murphy? Didn't play a ton as a rookie. I think I have similar takes as Lukas Van Ness with Myles Murphy. Power player where I thought he finished with 500. I'm in Clemson here. Jeez.
Clemson.
Well, I'd clicked into college for Harrison for something, and 304 total snaps for Myles Murphy. Played a little bit more down the stretch. I thought early on they were using him inside, but overall he ended up just being a pure edge rusher, and he's a power player, man. He's got burst and power, but not a great move set. But I did dive into his film kind of closely. He was better down the stretch. He did expand the move set just a little bit. I've got hopes for Murphy in year 2 because I think early in the year he was just trying to run through tackles. Started to show a little rip move, started to use his hands a little bit better. And I think Murphy in year 2, opposite Trey Hendrickson, with Sam Hubbard already there, but I think Murphy can make an impact in year 2 based off what he did down the stretch last year.
He's such an amazing athlete. Like, he's big, he's strong, he's fast, he's explosive. He's a great example of just how good a football player you need to be to make an impact in the NFL because he's got elite level physical tools. Like, you watch his tape, you're like, that guy should be dominating.
I watched a lot of him, Tyree Wilson, Van Ness. He looked more explosive than all the other all the other first round edges besides Will Anderson.
Right, but then you look at, like, absent the actual tool set, the technique to translate those physical tools into impact plays, you're going to be basically anonymous. Like, in college, you can get by with just athleticism and say, like, I'm going to destroy you. And the lower down the level you get, the easier that is. I mean, was it Jalix Hunt who has plays this year where literally he's just running clean around the outside of an offensive tackle? Like, an NFL level athlete against a joke level of competition. Like, I don't even need to engage you. Like, let alone have a move or run. Like, I can literally just beat you to a spot on the field and run all the way around you and you won't impact the play. And then, generally at the higher levels of college, you've got to at least break out some pass rush moves, but you're getting by largely with that athleticism, the burst, the size, the speed, the strength, etc. In the NFL, you just can't do that. It doesn't matter how freaky of an athlete you are. If you don't have the tool set, if you don't have the technique and the array of pass rushing moves of skills, it's not going to work. So Murphy, I think, showed year 1, great example of that. Like, great athlete, unless you're going to develop the tools, it's not going to matter.
So he finishes with a 58 grade, 64 as a pass rusher. I think Myles Murphy has the power to be like a Van Ness, a hammer, edge-setting run defender. Unlike some of the other, and then during the season, I thought tackles just weren't afraid of him getting around the edge, bending, or anything like that. But I do think he expanded his moveset. And when I looked back at my college notes, it's like, I don't know if he has the pass rush moveset. And you saw that a lot when he was rushing the passer at the NFL level. It didn't necessarily show up in the production, but you saw him winning a few different ways down the stretch. So I think of all the underutilized edge rushers or guys that weren't really productive in year 1, Van Ness and Tyree Wilson and Nolan Smith, who we're going to talk about in a minute here, I think Murphy might have the best chance in year 2 based off what I've seen here. And the Bengals need it, right? They need they need Murphy to step up and just give them more depth at that position. All right. Pick 29, New Orleans Saints, Bryan Bresee. He finished with 4.5 sacks officially by the NFL totals. His production profile, though, looked a little bit like Calijah Cancey for different reasons. Bresee's a bigger player, but I think a lot of his college issues as a longer defensive tackle were pad level driven, so he got knocked back quite a bit in the run game, but he's explosive, has some athleticism, and got after the quarterback.
Yeah, he's quite an unusual player where he is very long and upright and a high center of gravity, right? And doesn't have the kind of bulk to combat that, and is this straight ahead pass rushing type of player. But it makes him, he's almost like an interior version of Tyree Wilson, where, like, you're big, you're a huge person, but you're very tall, you're very long, you're very upright and angular, and you're not able to kind of sink the pads and combat that. So you're very easy to just out leverage and get out of the way. And I think Bresee showed that as a rookie, where okay, you can get some pressure with that style of play, but there's just so many plays where he's just an angle block just takes him out of the play. Like you're just immediately eradicated from the game.
Yeah, like we were saying at the very beginning of the show, it's amazing how much so many of the players just look like what they were in college. And that's not even confirming priors. It's just like same thing with Myles Murphy, same thing with Van Ness. We were worried about their ability to win or have enough versatility off the edge to really threaten tackles. With Bresee, it was the same idea. I was worried about pad level and size and how he anchored against the run, and you saw some of that. But you did see him rush the passer, and they did let him rush the passer a little bit more than like a higher percentage than playing the run. So I think there's some potential there, and again, the Saints need him, right? They need him to round out his game. Were you about to say something?
No, I'm still down a rabbit hole with thesaurus alternatives to finesse. They're so bad that I'm wondering if I have just misunderstood the word finesse for the last 40 years.
No, because finesse, yeah, right. So finesse in a real sense implies the guile thing makes sense in a non-football sense, right? We're going to finesse you. We're going to trick you. But
it's not using it. They're not giving.
That's what finesse might mean in a football sense, though. We're using it as the opposite of a mauler. We're using it as the opposite of a power player.
Right, but they're not using guile and savvy do not appear as like they're synonyms for the noun finesse as opposed to because you think like to finesse some like as the descriptor of like I'm going to go finesse somebody. That's not what it's being offered as an alternative to.
Okay.
It's being offered as an alternative to the noun, as in noun as in know-how and maneuver is what's written down here.
All right, we get two more players to discuss. Can we get through this?
Yeah.
Nolan Smith, pick 30 for the Philadelphia Eagles. How many snaps did Nolan Smith play?
Not that many.
Not that many.
Not enough, anyway.
So my initial impression of Nolan Smith, he looked small.
Yeah?
He looked small. He really is a fascinating player. Just 100, was it?
203 total snaps.
203 total snaps.
Including the playoffs.
He's really an interesting player because I think as a pass rusher, he felt small, which he is, right? He ran sub 4.4. That was supposed to offset.
He's a sub 240-pound edge rusher.
Right. He is small, felt small on the field. You didn't feel the burst as a rusher, and he wasn't really converting speed to power. And then you watch him in the run game, and the descriptor that I've used for Van Ness, who's 270, and Myles Murphy, who's 270, Nolan Smith plays the run like those guys. Like he is a powerful run defender with packs a punch with his hands, and he's explosive. So he's like a power player in the run game, but the power doesn't translate as a pass rusher just yet. That's what I saw from Nolan Smith.
Yeah, and that was reflected with how they used him. So if you had a 240-pound, sub 240-pound, relatively short as well. Like he's not a long, light guy, which we've seen. A compact sub 240-pound edge rusher who, by the way, ran a 4.39.
Right.
Like crazy fast, crazy burst. You would imagine, like if I told you that guy played 200 snaps in his rookie year, you would assume that like 180 of them were pass rushing snaps, right? But actually, he played as much against the run as he did in passing downs. Like they have him played as just you're just in the rotation. Like you're playing whatever. When somebody needs a breather, you're out there for 20 snaps. But they're not limiting him to this situational role where he can just pin his ears back and use that speed and burst, knowing that it's a pass rushing down. He's hesitant because he actually has to play the run and he has to play like a disciplined, even game, but at 240 pounds as a guy going up against 320-pound offensive tackles. Like the dude is battling from some serious deficit in terms of size.
So this makes me, I think, feeling pretty positive about his future, right? So when I say he felt small, that was like Tua's first year, Bryce Young last year. Like, didn't they felt small, felt like their arm wasn't good enough for the NFL. But once you get the weapons around Tua, he was fine, right? He won with anticipation. With a guy like Nolan Smith, again, the fact that he shows from just a pure power and hand strength standpoint, the dude can play. I think that'll eventually translate as a pass rusher. The challenge for him, just like Van Ness can't challenge the edge and Myles Murphy can't challenge the edge, Nolan Smith doesn't have length, so you're not winning with length.
Yeah.
And if you're not winning with power, you can't just run by every single tackle. So, but I think the power will get there as a pass rusher with Nolan Smith. But I was impressed with what he could do from a run game perspective. You know, he showed that at Georgia, jacking up tackles quite a bit, despite his length. You know, he always played low and could use his long arm and did that pretty well. Just didn't play a ton of ball last year, right? So we didn't see a ton. But I think as a pass rusher, he just looked like he wasn't going to run through tackles, and NFL tackles are really good. They know that.
Yeah, like his best performances were all in the run game. So
had to dabble at linebacker a little bit when Eagles got depleted, and he was playing middle linebacker at times, which, by the way, I think he could do if you really wanted him to. I don't think I want to draft him in round 1 to do that, but
right.
I think he could play a little traditional off-ball linebacker if you really needed him to. But I'm intrigued by what he can do in year 2. Just has to translate some of the run game power to his pass rushing.
I don't know that the NFL has ever been more ready to start pushing to push the boundaries of athletic traits and size and shapes of players. You know, normally they were very rigid of, this is what we need. You need to be this height, this fast, this heavy. You know, they had very strict parameters in terms of each position, what a guy needed to do. Now I think you're seeing them more ready than ever to say, we're going to draft a really good football player with some special athletic traits. And if the guy happens to be 30 pounds lighter than he should be, or 4 inches shorter or whatever, we're going to roll with it. And I think you're sort of seeing that it's not like the theory was ever wrong. Like, being dramatically undersized or too heavy or too small or too fat, like, it all makes an impact. It doesn't mean that you can't play at that size. It just means that there are things that are going to cause you problems that won't cause a different guy problems, right? And you never need to think about for a different player because the size or the speed or whatever offset that. So whether it's Emmanuel Forbes or Tank Dell or Nolan Smith, these are Calijah Cancey, these guys that are not ticking all the boxes from a size athleticism standpoint, I think they're running into problems that other guys just didn't have to deal with because they do have those things. So Nolan Smith is going to have to figure out a way of using his explosiveness and his get off and his burst and his speed whilst also, you know, playing the run and not like figuring out how to not just be because the alternative is you just play like Yannick Ngakoue, right? And whether or not it's a rundown, you don't care because you're rushing the passer, right? That is a pathway Nolan Smith could go down, but he's really good in the run, right. So it would be a shame, right? And if you're going to play the run as well as he does or as well as they want him to, now you need to figure out, well, how do I do that without that taking away from my biggest attribute as a pass rusher?
All right, let's wrap it up. Pick 31. Remember, the Dolphins did not have a first-round pick, so we only have to do 31 today. Felix Anudike-Uzomah, FAU, Kansas City Chiefs edge rusher. He only finished with 225 snaps last year. Most of them came in the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season. His playing time really decreased as the season went on, other than Week 18 when the Chiefs had their backups play.
They were depleted with injury, right? They had him in the lineup because
before Charles Omenihu.
Right.
While Charles Omenihu was suspended, FAU was in the rotation playing his 15 to 25 snaps per game. So he didn't really make a whole much of an impact as a rookie. Did have a huge run stop in the Super Bowl on one of his 7 snaps, but not much to talk about with FAU in year 1.
Yeah, so we had, the first 5 weeks of the season where he was relatively heavily in the rotation. Every one of those games was more than double-digit snaps for him. From that moment on, only 1 game, in fact, 0 games were above 10 snaps until the Week 18 game where obviously Kansas City's resting everybody, where he played basically the whole game against the Chargers.
Pass rush win rate of 3.3%. That's
abysmal.
Pretty bad, including the game against the Chargers. Now, he's going up against Rashawn Slater quite a bit. He was going up against the Chargers starters, but just two hurries, no QB hits, no sacks on 41 rushes in the one game where you got to see him as a starter. When he rushed the passer, he looked like he was trying to play like some of the power type players, but remember I called him Gumby coming out, like he had that bend and he was that ability to get around the corner. You just didn't see any of the special type of traits that he showed at Kansas State. You didn't get to see that really as a rookie.
But he actually had, so he was one of the guys, he's almost the opposite of Myles Murphy, where he actually had a really deep suite of pass rushing moves in college. Like he had a plan, he had an understanding, he had a wide variety of ways he could beat you. He wasn't the special athlete necessarily that some of the other guys were, but he actually had a really good level of just moves and an array of ways to win. But he was also the guy where this is what it feels like every year, where the top pass rushers go relatively high in the first round, and then somewhere along the road you reach this drop off, and then we get to like the best of the rest guys. It feels like we got a really bad track record of those guys panning out well recently. And whether it's him, BJ Ojulari is another one in that kind of category where it's like best of the rest type players. And then this year, that was the discussion. When do you start drafting those best of the rest guys? And okay, like FAU they didn't really get the opportunity because of that. I mean, 225 snaps is a really low level anyway. When you consider that they were also concentrated in like the first 5 weeks and then one game in with the second team effectively, it's a really low level of opportunity to do anything. Like 5 snaps, right, in a random game against Denver is basically irrelevant. You can't tell, right? 5 snaps and you get no pressure, that might have been just 5 bad reps. You might have been, the next snap might have been your one. And if you had that one, now 1 pressure and 6 rushes is fine, right? So it's tough. Like, I was a little bit disappointed that he wasn't able to do more when he was getting a bit of a rotation just because of the number of ways he has to win. Like, we didn't see that immediately translate. But it's also fair to say that's a really, really difficult sample size to show anything. I mean, Devonte Wyatt the year before was in a similar boat, right, where he was playing so infrequently that it's very difficult to judge him on those snaps because, you disappointed relative to that opportunity, but it's easy to sort of roll them all up and say, all right, what is it, 150 pass rushes, 11 pressures, that's not a good return, right? But because they're broken up and more than half of those are like 4, 6, 5, 2, 2, 1, 1, 3, 4, 4, 3, and another 4, right? That's basically zero opportunity in most of the games he got given. And if you had 1 pressure in like 3 of those opportunities, right? Number one, from a statistical point of view, that would be like dramatically exceeding your expectations. But also it completely transforms the overall numbers. So now you're like, I had a good rookie year on limited opportunity. So it's just very difficult to take anything really from that season other than he certainly didn't grasp any opportunity that he was given, but he was basically not given one.
So going forward, where does FAU fit in? I think, you've got George Karlaftis, Charles Omenihu as the starters on the edge. They move Chris Jones around. And
Omenihu just tore his ACL again, right? Didn't he?
Did he just get hurt again?
Wasn't that in the championship game?
Oh, yeah. I mean, FAU's got a chance. I think Mike Dana comes back. He's got a chance as part of this rotation, even if it's just on a high percentage of pass rush opportunities to show that moveset that he has. Not a great speed to power type of guy, but he's got all the other tools as you mentioned. So
yeah, AFC Championship game. Charles Omenihu tore his ACL against the Ravens. So
there'll be another early season opportunity for FAU to make an impact.
Very different type of player, obviously, from FAU, but it opens up a huge slab of snaps for him to play.
So there we go. That's all 31 2023 first-round picks. You want to just finish the draft? We'll go pick by pick?
No.
We will not. We will not. We will not do that. But a fun show. I like going down and breaking down the film, the production, a little recap of the last few picks here. We talked about Dalton Kincaid on the Bills and his ability to become an immediate weapon for Josh Allen. Mazi Smith's tough rookie season. And then a couple of those, the last 4 players in the first round were all defensive linemen who kind of struggled to make an impact, but I think there's high hopes for all those guys in year 2. Myles Murphy, Bryan Bresee, Nolan Smith, and Felix Anudike-Uzomah. All right, man, that's it for us today. We'll be back on Thursday. I think we're going to go through Wednesday. It's 4th of July week.
It is.
So for 4th of July, we're gonna do the show on 3rd of July.
Yeah.
So we're gonna be back
Day
live
early.
on Wednesday, and then give everybody the 4th of July weekend off.
What are we doing then? What are we talking?
I think defensive line rankings.
Okay.
On Wednesday. So that's it. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. We'll see you again on Wednesday for more PFF NFL podcast.